the attorneys would not be looking at you during witness examination. They'd be looking at their witness. And if that's okay with you, that's the way we'll do it. If it's not, we'll leave your video off. So what do you think?
As long as the presentation is stable with our videos on, I have no problem with that, if that's what you prefer.
Yeah, agreed.
Great. I think it worked well. So we'll try that. We've got our live stream going now. I also didn't realize the live stream was delayed 30 seconds for some odd reason. I don't know why that is, but we have our coaches and family and friends now with us, 30 seconds late. If each of you would take a quick look at your team rosters and see if you
Did you guys get those?
And if you have no problem, just indicate, and Amber can report that. And I have no problem when I looked at it. I have no conflict.
I have no conflict either.
I have no conflict.
And none for me either.
Great.
Great. All right. I think I'm all set. So I'm going to turn off my video, but I will be monitoring the chat and available. I'll be also listening. So if you guys need anything, let me know. My phone number is also in the chat if anybody needs anything.
Can we start? Are we cleared on conflicts through everybody else is cleared through conflicts?
We are. I just heard from the CBA.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning to all of our participants who we have some or all on the screen. If you could all activate your video, that would be very helpful, including the timekeepers. Let's see, I've got one, looks like I've got one two timekeepers. I'm missing a couple of witnesses here and one timekeeper as far as video. Both of those looks like one attorney. There we go. There's a defense timekeeper for Kevin is the team name here. Let me write that down. Okay, I'm still missing one witness for the Toby team.
Your Honor, Team Toby is competing all from one building. So just for the time being, all three of our witnesses are at this camera.
Great. Okay, and that'll be a separate camera for witness only then. Okay, we had a team doing that yesterday as well. So great.
Yes,
okay,
it won't be this camera. It'll be a separate one, but yeah, we all will be operating the same.
Understood. Okay, before we start, I just need a little preliminary information here before we have motions and things like that. Who is lead counsel for the Toby team, the plaintiff?
That's me, Your Honor.
And me meaning?
Sage Madden.
Sage Madden, there we go. Okay, and lead counsel for the Kevin team.
That is me, Your Honor, Heidi Haverkamp.
Got it. Okay. I'll be having some preliminary questions for you just before we get to our motions and actually formally start the trial. I find it just a little easier to do it this way because I have some specific questions rather than waiting to hear your motions. You may address them, you may not. It's easier for me to do it this way, I've found. Do we have for the plaintiff, Ms. Madden, let's see, let me just make a couple of quick notes here. Ms. Madden, do you have all three attorneys and all three witnesses ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. And meaning just that they're there, not, I'm not asking if you're ready for trial yet, just if you've got all your participants.
Yes, Your Honor, we have all our participants.
And Ms. Haverkamp, do you have all attorneys and all witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Now, secondly, how you may have already scheduled this to talk about in your opening remarks and motions, but I find it easier to do it this way. On exhibits, how are on the plaintiff's side, Ms. Madden, how are you going to present exhibits? Are you going to screen share? And if so, will the attorney, him or herself, be doing that, or will you have a third party helping you post exhibits?
Your Honor, we ask that co-counsel be allowed to screen share exhibits on behalf of the directing or crossing plaintiff.
Absolutely fine way to do it and much quicker, but you will be screen sharing then.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Haverkamp, how about for the defense?
We will also be screen sharing, and Ms. Sayers, our timekeeper, will be the third party conducting that.
Okay, and for our timekeeper on the defense side, that's okay. You can still keep time and post things as well. Okay, good. Let's see here. Also, for our timekeepers, for the plaintiff, the Toby team, I'm looking here. There we are. Ms. Bono, it looks like. How are you going to notify us? Are you going to do it by chat, or are you going to be holding up signs?
I will be putting the time checks in the chat.
Okay, we've had a small problem, as you may have noticed when if you were watching with the chat. And I just want to make sure that if you could enter something on the chat right now so that I can make sure that we all see it. I've got it. Do our timekeepers all have it? Great. Okay, and the same for our timekeeper for the defense. And I don't know your name, I'm sorry. It's not posted here, and oh, there you are. And your name, ma'am, is what?
Feliciana Sayers.
Last name again?
Sayers, S-A-Y-E-R-S.
Ms. Sayers, okay. Ms. Sayers, how are you going to post time?
I was also going to post time in the chat.
Okay, and if you could give me a chat real quick so we can make sure everybody can see it. Ah, great. All the timekeepers see it? I'm not getting a nod from everybody. There we go. Okay, Mr. Eliason. Everybody can see it. Great. So I don't know what happened before on our chat, but something was wrong, and now it's corrected. Okay. And one final thing from me before we start, and that is about examination types. You'll be allowed on your objections. There'll be an objection made with whatever type of objection is, like objection hearsay or objection 403 A or B or whatever it is. And then if we need additional explanation of that, sometimes if it's hearsay, usually that's all that's needed on the objection. If it's something more complicated like 404A or 404B, where you have to actually pick some reason, you have to pick some alternative under those rules, I may ask you for that. Well, exactly what? and then I'll want some brief explanation. Otherwise, I will turn immediately to the attorney who is doing the examination and ask for a response. I will ask then for a reply from the objecting party, and I may go back to the examining attorney, because ultimately it's their examination, so maybe they should get the last word, but I may go back to them for a fourth round of response, but I'll try to keep it to that, either 3 or 4 rounds: the objection, the response, and the reply, maybe then a surreply. So that's how I will do it, and we'll try to keep it moving along that way. Otherwise, I think that's all the preliminary matters I have. And we can formally start the matter then, and we'll do so now. And Ms. Madden, is the plaintiff ready for trial?
Your Honor, we have a few preliminary matters.
Let me get everybody sworn in before we do that, but you will be first. Ms. Haverkamp, is the defendant ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor, but we briefly ask that we do introductions before we proceed.
Yep, and I'll be doing that right now. Going down my script here and doing all that, and then getting into our pretrial motions. Let's see here. For all of the folks that are joining us through the live streaming service, please remember that you're certainly welcome to watch, assuming you are not connected with a different team. Now, there is some exceptions where a family may have more than one student on different teams. It happens every now and then, but otherwise, if you are not associated with either the Toby team or the Kevin team, I ask you please to adjourn now and not watch this for competitive reasons. Also, those folks that are watching on live streaming, remember that although you may watch, you may not record this, you may not take screenshots, and that's unfortunate to see your family, friends on the screen and not be able to record it or take screenshots, but the CBA has that right and no one else. I believe there is a way that you can get recordings of this after the fact, but not current ones. So please do not do that. For the participants, remember, and you're probably well aware through many rounds, there are no recesses during this. You may ask to confer with counsel, with co-counsel during an examination or any other time, but that counts against your time. There's no recesses when time is stopped, with 2 important exceptions. One is for medical emergencies. If something happens to someone, or if you notice, if one of your other team members notices something going on and interrupts, just make sure you tell me, and we will stop things. We will get that situation addressed. I know this from firsthand, having been giving opening statement at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon in a trial many years ago, and I passed out cold. And I had the flu, and I wasn't eating and drinking anything, and it was a very tense situation to begin with. I passed out cold. So medical emergencies are nothing to be ashamed of or to be timid about. Also, every one of these has some technical problems. These virtual trials, you all are experienced with it. Everyone seems to deal with it very well. But if there are technical problems, we will stop time. If we have technical problems of during the examinations of, something happens with exhibits can't get posted right, there's delays, there's, your screen is, or you lose a little bandwidth, and you have to have questions, answers repeated, things like that. If that becomes an issue, I will, before the end of the first session, meaning the plaintiff's case, and the second session, the defense case, I will add a little time to everybody's time. If I see that this is a problem, I may add 30 seconds or a minute so that the last examination doesn't get shortchanged. But that'll be in my discretion. But I've been I keep fairly good track of it. Other than that, time will be strictly enforced. If you do run over time and there is a stop, that can be you can be graded down for that, and you're well aware of that. If we have a discrepancy in the time, I will usually, not always, but I'll usually go with the discretion is a better part of valor. I will give the more to the timekeeper who has more time the benefit of the doubt. Not every time, but that's often what I do. So we try to keep the timekeepers on track. And if the timekeepers are communicating, which I hope they do, if there is a discrepancy, let us know immediately. Just say, we need to stop for a moment, get this time issue resolved, and then we'll move forward. You're also aware, well aware of that if there are any disputes that arise, whether they are inside the bar or outside, meaning that I decide inside disputes inside the bar, disputes outside the bar need to be resolved after the competition. You're probably more aware of those than I am, as far as what you can raise to me and what you have to raise later on. I am now going to ask each team to introduce themselves. Ms. Madden, if you would introduce yourself, pass the baton to your co-counsel, and then we'll hear from the witnesses as well. So Ms. Madden, you're first.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Sage Madden, and today I'll be doing the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and preliminary matters. May my co-counsel introduce themselves?
Yes, they may. And if I could have everybody on screen, everybody who can activate their screen, please do so. But Ms. Yet, go right ahead.
Oh, actually, I'm Miss Chamberlain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Your Honor. Members of the jury, my name is Raven Chamberlain, and today I will be doing the opening statement, the direct examination of Carson Durst, and the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Rachel Yett. Today, I will be performing the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, as well as the closing argument. May our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Elwood Shefflin. Today, I will be performing the role of Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Abby Miller, and I'll be performing the role of Carson Durst.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Mickey Yates, and I'll be performing the role of Dakota Weirs.
Thank you. And now for the defense, Ms. Haverkamp, if you can introduce yourself and then pass along to your co-counsel and witnesses.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Heidi Haverkamp, and I represent Lush Fertilizer.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ashlyn Bierig, and I represent Lush Fertilizer.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Kira Graham, and I represent Lush Fertilizer.
May our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, they may.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Liam Anderson, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Moira Newman, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Jordan Merriweather, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you very much. And if you'd leave your videos on, and everybody else who just so I have everybody on video, because I'm going to start swearing people in here under the rules. And so anybody who needs to turn a video on, do so. I've got, looks like 3 attorneys, 3 witnesses. There we go. That looks like everybody, including the timekeepers, please. Okay, first of all, I need all attorneys, please, to raise your right hands. You can leave your audio off, and if you assent to this oath, you can merely nod your head. Attorneys, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. You can lower your hands. Now all 6 witnesses, please raise your hands, right hands. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Thank you very much. You may lower your hands. Now my 3 scoring panelists, if you would raise your right hands. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? And timekeepers, please raise your hands. Timekeepers, do you promise that you will keep time and communicate between yourselves in accordance with the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Thank you. Now, I'm going to do one more thing here just to save a little time during the trial. I'm going to swear all the witnesses in, all 6 of you, for your testimony. That way, instead of swearing each one of you as you would come to the stand if we were in person, which is the normal way to do it, all the attorney calling you to the stand has to do is call you to the stand and begin testifying. So if all the witnesses would raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide today in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Now, I forgot to do this, and I should have, but I forgot. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to ask each of our scoring panelists to briefly introduce themselves to you so you know who your jury is. You would normally do this during voir dire and find this out. But Ms. Schlinzog, if you could go first.
Sure. So my name is Melinda Schlinzog. I'm a civil attorney practicing just outside of Denver. I was very involved in mock trial myself when I was in high school. We ended up going to the nationals tournament. And since becoming an attorney, I also coached a local high school team for 4 years. So hopefully this should be pretty familiar.
Thank you. And Ms. Reed?
Hi, sorry if there's background noises, but my name is Kaleya Reed, and I'm a 1L student at the University of Denver Stearns College of Law. And I'm very excited to be here and see what everyone has to offer.
Thank you. And Mr. Eliason?
My name is Brett Eliason. I'm a criminal defense attorney in Denver. I did mock trial throughout law school, and I've been involved judging scoring competitions, high school, college. So good luck.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our scoring panelists to kill their video for the time being. However, during opening and closing, the jurors, the scoring panelists, will be available to you. We'll have them on the screen for their video, not their audio, so that the attorneys giving opening and closing can look at your jury. During witness examination, they will not be on the screen, however, because normally you don't look at the jury during witness examination. So we'll now proceed with preliminary matters. Ms. Madden, do you have any issues that we need to address before we start?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a few issues. I would like to ask that the jury has all jury instructions and stipulated facts.
We will assume they do, yes.
And the court has all prior rulings on the matter?
Yes, the prior order that was entered regarding one expert witness.
And I also ask that after each direct and cross, you may give us a short amount of time to be able to change the name on the screen and to transition in between stations as we're all competing from the same building.
Of course.
That will be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Haverkamp, anything for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense has one additional preliminary matter. We request that when entering exhibits, that both the witness and attorney consult their own copies of the exhibits and that they are not displayed on screen until they have been entered.
I find it's a lot easier and faster that the exhibits get posted when you move for an exhibit to be marked for identification so that I can deal with the exhibit and you can talk about it and see if I'm going to admit it, that you do screen share it. I simply will have instructed the jury, don't look at this exhibit. So effectively, they are not seeing it until I admit it, but you will screen share it immediately when you ask for it to be marked for identification, if that's acceptable.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Great, and that will of course work for both plaintiff and defendant. Anything else?
No, Your Honor. The defense is ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will start with our opening statements. And Ms. Chamberlain, for the plaintiff, you may begin.
Before I begin, I just want to make sure that timers are ready.
Good point. Timers, are we all ready? I've got a yes and a yes.
And am I okay to begin, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Profits over people. Ladies and gentlemen, you're here today because of Lush Fertilizer and their persistent need to put their own profits over the health and wellness of people. Young, smart, capable people like Dakota Wires. Now you're going to hear from Dakota Wires herself today. Dakota is now a 20-year-old woman enduring the detrimental effects of cancer, more specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, cancer has taken so much away from Dakota, but one of the largest things that has taken away is her ability to play piano. Dakota's ability to play piano started out as a hobby where she would play with her grandfather, but quickly excelled into a dream and a passion. Today, you will hear how she was offered a full ride scholarship to Juilliard, but was unable to accept due to the effects of her cancer. Today, you will hear how a young girl had her dreams ripped away by Lush Fertilizer and their need to put their profits over people. Now, Lush Fertilizer, like its name suggests, makes fertilizer. They have this new, amazing, game-changing fertilizer that includes an ingredient called Drufo. Now, today, Lush is going to try to tell you how amazing Drufo is. But ladies and gentlemen, it is a possible carcinogen. Today, you will hear the story of Dakota Wires and Lush Fertilizer through 6 witnesses, 3 from the plaintiff and 3 from the defense. First, the plaintiff will call our 3 witnesses, Dr. Casey Rogers, Carson Durst, and finally Dakota Wires. Dr. Casey Rogers is a current professor in horticulture and entomology at the University of California, Berkeley. He will tell you of his copious amounts of research and reports and how Drufo is a possible carcinogen. Dr. Casey Rogers will also tell you how Dakota was exposed to Lush Fertilizer almost daily, making it more likely than not that this is where she got her cancer. Dr. Casey Rogers will show you how Lush continues to put their profits over people through not getting rid of the possible carcinogens in Drufo. Carson Durst will tell you their personal relationship with Blake Doncourt, the current CEO of Lush. They will tell you how this relationship quickly deteriorated after they started working for them at Lush Fertilizer. Carson will also tell you about a process called baking, which could have gotten rid of any possible carcinogen in Drufo, but this process never happened. Ladies and gentlemen, Carson Durst will show you how Lush continues to put their profits over people through not baking Drufo. Last, Dakota Wires will be called. Dakota will tell you how she worked at Haven Landscaping for a number of years and used Lush Fertilizer all throughout. Dakota will tell you of her dream and passion of piano and how now she has an undetermined future due to Lush Fertilizer and their need to put profits over people. Next, defense will call their 3 witnesses, Dr. Devin Williams, Skylar Wires, and Blake Doncourt. Dr. Devin Williams is a paid employee of Lush Fertilizer, showing their possible financial bias in today's case. They are putting their own profits over people like Dakota. Skylar Wires is Dakota's estranged twin. showing they're also possible bias in today's case as they are testifying against her today. Skylar Wires is also a writer for a magazine called The Rationalist. They will tell you of their research on Drufo, but ladies and gentlemen, they only researched Drufo for 1 year. Skylar Wires is putting their own profits over the health and wellness of their twin Dakota. Last, Blake Doncourt. Blake Doncourt is the current CEO of Lush Fertilizer, and they will tell you how they never heard of any concerns regarding Drufo. They will also tell you how they made the choice to not bake Drufo, and they will tell you how there were possible risks, and they chose to not bake them out. Blake Doncourt is putting their own profits over people like Dakota. Now, the plaintiff has to prove to you by the preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer is negligent, and that is what we are here to do. We ask you to see how Lush Fertilizer continues to put their profits over people like Dakota Wires. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the defendant, we have opening by Ms. Graham. And you may proceed.
Not all heroes wear capes. Blake Doncourt, like every child, wanted to be a superhero. He looked up to idols like Superman, the Flash, people who fought for good and saved the world. When Blake Doncourt grew up and lost interest in things like comic books, while the need to fight for what was right remained, he started an eco-friendly company called Lush Fertilizer, one with revolutionary products. Ms. Chamberlain told you that Lush chose profits over people, but this new company chose profits for the people. This new company put their profits back into charities dedicated to cleaning up the environment. And as this company grew, as more and more people chose to be part of the solution, competitors were watching. And once Lush began to dominate the market, rivals took aim. Negative news reports. Dakota Weirs saw one of these negative news reports and pulled their trigger. But Lush is not the villain of her story. In reality, Lush Fertilizer is the only fertilizer designed not to harm people. Lush and Blake Doncourt have won several awards for the safety of their fertilizer. Now, when we think of CEOs, we don't often think of heroes. But not all heroes wear capes. Some wear suits, ties. Some own companies, and some are working tirelessly for a greener tomorrow. Good morning, Your Honor, Counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Kira Graham, and together with Ashton Burek and Heidi Haverkamp, we represent Lush Fertilizer. Today, the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. The plaintiff must prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent in causing Dakota Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Only if they manage to meet this burden will we, in turn, be obliged to prove comparative fault, meaning Dakota Weirs was negligent, and it was that negligence that caused her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs worked with many fertilizers other than Lush's, fertilizers less safe than Lush's, and did this while ignoring the safety labels, along with all of the persistent orders from her boss to wear protective clothing. Dr. Casey Rogers confirms that wearing the protective clothing Dakota Weirs refused to would have significantly reduced all carcinogenic risk. And Carson Durst works for Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor and holds a personal animosity against Blake Doncourt. The same Blake Doncourt who went above and beyond to make sure his product was safe, even having the Environmental Protection Agency clear it as safe. Dr. Devin Williams found that the only study the plaintiff relies on to prove Lush isn't safe is a product of confirmation bias. Skylar Weirs did her own research for a year and concludes this trial to be a pseudo-scientific hit job orchestrated by rival companies. Throughout today's trial, as the evidence is shown, ask yourself these 3 questions. Would we be here right now if Dakota Weirs had just worn the protective clothing like she was told to? What do Lush's competitors gain from this lawsuit? And where is the definitive link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? At the end of today's trial, Ms. Viereck will stand before you and walk with you through the evidence. She will answer these 3 questions and ask that you find Lush Fertilizer not liable. Remember, not all heroes wear capes. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have the first witness for the plaintiff, Ms. Yett. I believe you're first up, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And we'll be having Ms. Haverkamp on cross-exam, and Ms. Yett, you may call your witnesses.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
And Dr. Rogers, you've been sworn. Ms. Yett, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
Who are you, Dr. Rogers?
Well, that's a bit of a deep question, Miss Yett, I must admit. I'd say first and foremost, I'd describe myself as curious. I spent years researching different studies, working in chemical companies, and going through academia to find things out. That's what's most important about me.
What does your education look like?
Well, I have a lot of it. I started off with a bachelor's of science from the Colorado State University in agriculture and chemistry. And after that, a lot of long nights and research being done. I earned my PhD from the University of California, Berkeley, in horticulture and entomology.
And what does your work history look like?
Well, after completing a large amount of my education, I moved on to an unnamed chemical company. And at that job, I just reviewed data, made it into reports, and sent those reports up the line.
And what do you do for work now?
Currently, I work at a toxicology lab at UC Berkeley, and I teach a couple of classes at that university.
What is toxicology, Dr. Rogers?
Well, that's an important question, I must say. It's definitely a broad field. Really, anything that studies the effect of chemicals or, more specifically toxins on a human or other animal, that would be toxicology.
Thank you. And you briefly mentioned research earlier. What are some of your research interests?
Oh, of course. I think first and foremost, currently, my research interests would fall into that area of toxicology, most notably the metabolism of toxicants, which is just breaking down those chemicals and prolonged exposure to those chemicals.
Thank you. Your Honor, under Rule 702, I now ask that Dr. Rogers be admitted as an expert witness in agriculture and toxicology.
And Ms. Haverkamp, any objection to either of those areas, agriculture or toxicology, for Dr. Rogers?
No objection, Your Honor.
Dr. Rogers is so qualified then. Ms. Yett, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, can you talk to me about some of the studies that you've done?
Of course. More recently, I published 2 large studies in 2019, just reviewing weed resistance to Drufo and human exposure to the product. But I think more importantly, after publishing those 2 studies, I released a study that I've been working on for a lot of years, just looking at farm workers and other people with exposure to Drufo and any health effects they experience.
Let's back up just a little bit. What is Drufo?
Well, Drufo is a bonding agent that's used in many of Lush Fertilizer's products. It's really just has the role of keeping that product preserved for a long period of time.
And what originally piqued your interest in Drufo?
Well, I've been interested in Drufo since it first came on the market. Like once that product was being sent out to shelves, it was clear to me that it wasn't adequately studied from my experience with those studies surrounding toxicology. And I just was worried about the product's safety, especially after a couple of years after it came on the market, people continued to make more and more reports of the product's lack of safety.
So tell me more about the study that you've done on Drufo.
Of course, my study simply reviewed 3 major groups of people, those with daily exposure to Drufo, those with occasional exposure to the product, and a control group with no exposure to Drufo whatsoever. And we looked at any medical issues or benefits that would come out of the exposure to Drufo.
And what were the official results, if you will, of this study?
Well, we did have pretty conclusive results at the end of the series of years. Those in our 3rd group with daily exposure to Drufo were 10 times more likely than our control group to contract cancer, more specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And those with only occasional exposure were still twice as likely as our control group to contract that same condition.
So what does this tell us about Drufo as a whole?
Well, the data is pretty clear. Drufo is a carcinogen.
And what is a carcinogen?
Oh, I apologize. I'm used to talking with a lot of other toxicologists in my life. A carcinogen just means a product or a chemical that's likely to cause cancer.
Okay, and we'll move on a little bit to the exposure of Drufo. How can a person be exposed to Drufo?
Sure. Well, there's 2 major routes of exposure to Drufo, one of which, of course, is through absorption. Touching the product at all will get it into your bloodstream through your skin. And at that point, it can go throughout your entire body. Similarly, you can inhale the product and it'll go down your esophagus into your lungs. And at that point, once again, it can get into the bloodstream and head through the rest of the body.
And how can a person prevent this harmful exposure to Drufo?
Well, it's a big question for sure. I'd say first and foremost, Drufo has to be off the market. The only way to stop people from being exposed to a product is to stop them from having it around. And that's the safest possible route. But for those workers who can't just stop using Drufo, the best course of action would be to wear a mask, long pants, and long sleeves.
We'll move on a little bit. Did you do any research about this case prior to today?
Absolutely. I did as much as I can. I reviewed all of Dakota Weir's work information and medical information surrounding their diagnosis.
So moving back to your study, you mentioned those groups. Which of those groups, hypothetically, would Dakota fall under?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. Really, the 3rd group is those with daily exposure and included a wide variety of people. So a landscaping worker like Dakota with daily exposure to that product would absolutely fall into that 3rd group.
Thank you. And moving on a little bit, you said that a few people got sick within your study. What were some of their symptoms that you observed?
I mean, we
Objection.
were largely.
This is outside the scope of the witness's expertise. This would call for specialized knowledge within the field of being some sort of medical doctor, which Dr. Rogers had not been tenured in.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, this witness has already clarified that they do have significant knowledge about toxicology, which includes the prolonged exposure to chemicals and the metabolism of toxicants. And they're just simply stating what they observed within their study.
And Ms. Haverkamp?
Dr. Rogers was testifying as to symptoms of cancers and the effects of those cancers. That would be within the field of a medical doctor, not within the field of a toxicologist.
Right, I'm going to overrule the objection on this ground. I don't find that Dr. Rogers is testifying as to any medical issue of a cancerous condition, like a diagnosis of it or treatment of it, but merely that taking the fact that he reads from the medical records that Dakota Weirs has cancer, taking that as a presumed fact, he's relating the toxicology issue to that presumed fact. He's not testifying that the truth of whether that cancer exists or why, just why the person, whether the person has cancer, but just the assumed fact of cancer, going backwards then to the toxicology issue. So if I find that he starts testifying to actual medical issues, we'll have perhaps another objection and I'll change this ruling. But for now, he may so testify. So Ms. Yett, you may go forward.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat my question, Dr. Rogers?
Yes, I'd appreciate that.
What were some of the symptoms that you observed of people within your study?
Well, people within our study had a variety of different issues that we were monitoring. Those who fell under the most affected by this toxicology were experiencing things like night sweats, heavy, long-lasting and painful fevers, rapid weight loss and loss of appetite, and a variety of other, difficult things to go through.
Thank you. And based on that, what can you conclude about Drufo and Dakota?
In my expert opinion, there's a massive degree of medical probability that Dakota Weir's cancer was caused by exposure to Drufo.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
And Ms. Haverkamp, cross-exam.
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Rogers. My name is Heidi Haverkamp. You authored a total of 6 publications.
I apologize, I didn't hear that question. Could you restate it?
You authored a total of 6 publications.
You were just asking about the things that have been published? I believe so. I don't have the exact number memorized.
And out of these 6 publications, 4 of them are on Drufo alone.
That sounds right to me.
And all 4 of these publications speak negatively about Drufo.
Well, no, these publications don't have a bias either way at all. They're simply reviewing data and putting them in.
Dr. Rogers, that was not my question. My question was, these 4 publications speak negatively about Drufo. And your answer is yes, correct?
No, my answer is no. They're non-biasedly reviewing this data.
They do not reach conclusions that are not in favor of Drufo?
I mean, they're reviews of existing evidence. Of course, they aren't reaching conclusions.
All right, let's talk about your study. You conducted a study pertinent to this case.
I did.
This study examined 3 different test groups.
Yes, I had 3 groups of people.
The first being your control group having no exposure to Drufo.
That's correct.
Your second having occasional exposure to Drufo.
That is also correct.
And your third having prolonged exposure to Drufo.
Yes.
So doctor, throughout the entirety of your study, the only chemical that you controlled for was Drufo.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's relevant to say that on the topic of other chemicals that these people were using, the way that we control for that is by using a massive sample size and a variety of—
Dr. Rogers, that was not my question. My question was, you only controlled for Drufo. And your answer is yes, correct?
Well, my answer is perhaps. I think it depends on what you mean by controlling for a chemical.
Now, let's talk about your experience as an expert witness. This is the first time you'll be testifying as an expert.
It is. I'm happy to let the court know about my expertise.
You have been retained to testify.
I am being paid for my time here today.
And you hope that this won't be your last time giving testimony.
I mean, it's a very important issue. I would like more people to hear about it and more
Your
cases.
own words, you will be on the forefront of this battle.
Absolutely. I hope to be at the forefront.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the second part of your study. You examined ways to best mitigate and prevent exposure.
You mean protective equipment?
Yes, you examined ways to best mitigate and prevent exposure.
I did, yes.
And through this study, you found that fertilizers could be inhaled while aerosolized.
That's correct.
And that they also could be absorbed through contact with the skin.
Yeah, just like I testified on my direct, absorption is a very major route of exposure.
Yes, and you made recommendations.
I did.
Because you have made recommendations to regulatory agencies before.
I have regulatory agencies, companies, the like.
Recommendations on the precautions that should be taken by laborers working with chemicals.
Well, precautions that might help, not necessarily what should or shouldn't be taken.
Dr. Rogers, in your own words, recommendations that should be taken by laborers while working with chemicals.
Sure, I might have said that.
Yes, and in this case, you made recommendations.
Is this about the safety of Drufo?
You made recommendations to wear a mask while working with pesticides
I did.
and to utilize protective clothing while working with pesticides.
Absolutely. That's the way you prevent absorption.
And you agree that Mrs. Weirs did not follow any of these recommendations by not utilizing this protective gear.
Like many other workers, protective equipment isn't adequately supplied, and so the—
Dr. Rogers, that was not my question. My question was, you would agree that Mrs. Weirs did not utilize this protective gear? And your answer is yes, correct?
Like I was answering the question, like other workers, yes, Dakota Wires was not wearing protective gear.
And Dr. Rogers, you are aware that the exact recommendations that you gave are listed on the back of all of Lush Fertilizer's products.
Well, I think it's relevant to say that those aren't the recommendations that I made. They're distinct.
Dr. Rogers, the recommendations you made that include wearing a mask?
My recommendations were made long after that packaging was finished, so I sort of
Yes,
doubt
but you
it.
gave the same recommendations, Dr. Rogers.
You mean they recommend the same action?
Yes.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I don't think I've seen any Lush packaging recently.
Dr. Rogers, you're an expert in this case,
I am.
and you reviewed the exhibits before coming here today?
Well, I reviewed the exhibits that are pertinent to my testimony, sure.
And you did not review Exhibit 1, the Lush Fertilizer packaging?
I'm not an expert in business markets. I don't know about packaging or about Lush
No,
fertilizer.
doctor, you're not, but you did give recommendations on this exact label.
Objection, lack of personal knowledge. May I explain my objection?
I'm going to, based on the witnesses, well, I understand your response. The doctor has testified that he hasn't looked at it. Ms. Haverkamp, are you going to continue with your questioning on this, or do you wish to respond to that objection?
As a respond, Your Honor?
Okay, go right ahead.
On direct examination, Dr. Rogers testified that he reviewed extensive resources while preparing for this case. I'm simply asking if he reviewed this exhibit or the recommendations that are given on this exhibit, the same recommendations that he in fact gave.
And he has answered that question. Do you need more than his answer that he did not? Or can we move on?
We can move on.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Rogers, you testified on direct that there was a massive degree of scientific probability.
Medical probability, yes.
But in your statement, you say that your results only suggest a correlation.
I am pretty sure in my affidavit, I do say there's a large degree of medical probability. It's an important phrase in the scientific community.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Ms. Yett, redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Without redirect, there is no recross, of course. Dr. Rogers, you may, your testimony is concluded. You may be excused. We'll now have the second witness for the plaintiff, and Ms. Chamberlain, I believe, is going to direct for the plaintiff. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could just have one moment to change my name.
Of course. And we have Ms. Graham, who is the, give me just a moment here, is going to be on cross. And let me get that connected. And Ms. Chamberlain, you may call your witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
And Ms. Durst, you have been sworn. Ms. Chamberlain, you may proceed.
And before I begin, I just want to make sure timers are ready. Am I good to begin, Your Honor?
I've got a yes. I guess we only need one. There we go. Yes and yes. Go right ahead.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Carson Durst, and Durst is spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Are you currently employed, Ms. Durst?
I am, yes.
Where do you work?
I work with Terra's Greenery currently.
What's your position at Terrace?
I'm our lead product developer, which essentially means that I run our research and development team at Terra's.
About how long have you worked at Terrace Greenery?
I began in late 2006, and so it's been about 15, 16 years now.
Did you work anywhere prior to working at Terrace Greenery?
I did, yes. As a matter of fact, directly prior to working for Terrace Greenery, I worked for Lush Fertilizer.
What was your position at Lush?
I was initially hired on as an intern, and then within a few short months, I was promoted to a full-time position on the research and development team, and that's the role that I spent the rest of my time in.
About how long did you work at Lush?
I was hired as an intern in June 2003 and left right before my employment at Terra's in late 2006, and so it was about three and a half years.
Did you work on any specific products while you were at Lush?
I did, yes. Lush was actually in the process of developing their flagship ingredient, Drufo, during the time that I was at the company. So I worked quite extensively on the research and development of the ingredient.
And what is Drufo?
Drufo is a chemical bonding agent developed internally by Lush and is what they say makes their fertilizer so revolutionary.
Are there any downfalls of Drufo?
Absolutely, yes. Drufo, through studies, has been found to be potentially carcinogenic or potentially cancer-causing. So that was and absolutely still is a downfall of the ingredient.
How do you know about these downfalls?
I initially heard about Drufo being potentially carcinogenic through a study that I came across actually during my time at Lush.
Now, we're going to move on a little bit to your relationship with Blake Doncourt. Do you know Blake Doncourt?
Not as well as I used to, but for a solid period of my life, especially my earlier life, I did know Blake and the Doncourt family quite well.
What was your relationship with them?
Blake was the parent of one of my childhood best friends, Charlie. So because Charlie and I played soccer together, I spent pretty extensive time with Blake. We became as close as you could with one of your friend's parents. I guess you could say that Blake became almost a mentor to me over time. But as soon as I got hired at Lush and through my time there, that relationship really began to deteriorate, and now it just isn't what it used to be.
Now, speaking of Lush, did you come into any conflicts while you were at Lush?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Could you ask that question again? I missed the last part of it to find out if it was a leading question. Please ask the question again.
I just said, did you come into any conflicts while you were at Lush?
Ms. Graham, why do you consider that to be a leading question? Does it suggest the answer?
It leads to only a yes or no answer with the word did. I request that the question be more open-ended.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Not every question that asks for a yes and no answer is leading, provided it does not suggest that answer. I don't consider that, especially as far as background information, leading to whether or not there was a conflict to be leading. So overruled, Ms. Chamberlain. If you need to repeat the question, you may.
Ms. Durst, did you need me to repeat my question?
No, you're fine. I think I've got it. I did come into some conflicts during my time at Lush, especially related to the potentially carcinogenic qualities in Drufo that we just previously discussed. I was, of course, concerned about these potentially carcinogenic qualities in Lush's flagship ingredient and that impact that it could have on customer safety. And so I expressed this outwardly quite frequently during my time at Lush, but a lot of my coworkers didn't seem to agree with the position that I held and didn't prioritize customer safety in the way that I did. And so we definitely conflicted quite a bit.
Did you ever bring up these conflicts to your superiors?
Absolutely, yes. And most notably, I brought them up to Blake John Court. Blake and I had a conversation where I addressed or attempted to address both my concerns with the potentially carcinogenic qualities in Drufo, as well as my concerns with my coworkers. But Blake essentially told me just to handle my own issues.
Did these conflicts ever become resolved?
No, not at all. In fact, they just got worse throughout my time at Lush. I eventually started receiving really negative performance reviews, which were filled out and filed by my coworkers. I was put on a performance improvement plan. I assume because they were attempting to regulate what I was saying and regulate my words. And so I really just got worse, and I eventually was motivated to leave Lush in 2005.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Ms. Graham, cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Durst. My name is Kier Graham.
Good morning.
Ms. Durst, on direct, you said Blake and I had a conversation where I addressed the findings, but he told me to figure out my own issues, correct? That's what you said on direct?
Yeah, I think I said exactly that. Blake essentially told me to handle my own issues. That conversation was nearly 20 years ago at this point. So yeah, it was something to that effect.
But you also specifically said, I brought these concerns up to Blake Doncourt as well.
Not as well. I mean, Blake Doncourt was the superior who I brought these up to. I, of course, conversed with my coworkers about my concerns, but the only higher up that I really brought them up to was—
Ms. Durst, you specifically said on direct, I brought these concerns up to Blake Doncourt.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, I just got confused with the as well, but yeah, that is correct.
Is it your testimony today that in the conversation where he told you to work things out, to figure out your own issues, you brought up those concerns?
I brought up the concerns that I was having with my coworkers. Yeah, absolutely. I felt like my performance was being looked down on.
You said on direct that you brought up the concerns about the carcinogenicity to Blake Doncourt. Is it your testimony today that you did not bring up these concerns?
Well, it's a little confusing in the way that you're wording it there. The concerns that I had about my coworkers were because I had been bringing up my concerns about the carcinogenic qualities in Drufo to my coworkers. So what I was attempting to say to Ms. Chamberlain was that by bringing up my concerns with my coworkers, that by extension was bringing up those concerns that I had about the potentially carcinogenic qualities in Drufo, even if I didn't express that directly to Blake.
Just to be clear, you did not tell Blake Doncourt about your concerns of carcinogenicity?
No, not directly, but as I've stated before, I believe it was implied.
Ms. Durst, you know of other studies that you did not include in your testimony today?
Could you repeat that? I just couldn't quite hear you there. My apologies.
You know of other studies that you did not include in your testimony today?
Yeah, Ms. Chamberlain and I only discussed the England study, which found that Drufo could be potentially carcinogenic. But there was 2 studies conducted internally by Lush that I know quite well. One conducted in June 2003 by Lush and one in September 2003. And so I have pretty wealthy knowledge on both of those.
You also know of multiple studies done by the manufacturer of C3N09P, correct?
Yes.
These studies did not find this compound to be carcinogenic.
It did not, no. But of course, the one that did is the one that flagged my attention. As if any study were to find that, I would, of course, have concerns.
Ms. Durst, you chose to mention the one study you found compared to the multiple manufacturer studies?
Of course, I mean, if there's going to be any risk, I of course want to prioritize customer safety and mitigate any potential risk which could exist. And so, of course, that's the one that I focused on.
Ms. Durst, for evidence, you also only brought the one study in comparison to the manufacturer's studies.
Brought where? Do you mean to court here today?
Yes.
I don't know the entire list of exhibits quite well, but the only ones I provided to my attorney was that England study. That is correct. I felt it was the most relevant.
And as you said on direct, a lot of your coworkers disagreed with your findings.
Yeah, it was clear that my opinion was not shared by many of my coworkers during my time at Lush. And that's the reason for a lot of those conflicts that Ms. Chamberlain and I just discussed.
Ms. Thirst, let's talk about the end of your career at Lush Fertilizer.
Sure.
You were best friends with Blake Doncourt's son.
Yes, I don't know what that has to do with my career at Lush, but yes, for a long time in my life, I absolutely was. Charlie was one of my best friends.
Well, it does have to do with your career at Lush because you found out about the summer internship through Charlie Doncourt, correct?
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily relate to the end of my time at Lush, but that does relate to the beginning of my employment. That is how I first heard of the internship.
Ms. Thirst, you were like family to the Doncourts.
Was being the operative word.
You were hired over more qualified and experienced engineers.
I was, yes, I had done quite well during my time at ASU. I wasn't top of my class, but I believed I'd done quite well. And so that relevant degree, my degree in chemical engineering, of course, qualified.
I did not ask about your degree. I asked if you were hired over more experienced and qualified engineers. Your answer is yes.
It is, but I also don't want to ignore the qualifications that I did have at the time of my hiring.
You got several bad performance reviews while working at Lush.
I did, yes. As I discussed with Ms. Chamberlain previously, this was after I had brought up a lot of my concerns around the potential carcinogenic qualities in Drufo. So I think that one really speaks for itself.
Ms. Durst, that is not what I asked you. I asked if you got several bad performance reviews. Your answer is yes.
It is, and what I just explained is why.
You were put on a performance improvement plan.
Oh, I'm sorry, you just cut out there. Could you repeat that one more time? My apologies.
You were put on a performance improvement plan.
Yes, I was, for likely the same reasons.
And you were fired.
I was. Ultimately, in the end of 2006, Lush felt like they couldn't keep me around anymore. And so I was ultimately fired, and now I work at Terra's.
Terra's Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
Yeah, it at least was back in 2006. It was one of their biggest competitors, sure.
And before that, you went to talk to Blake Doncourt specifically about your boss, Jerry Langley.
Yes, yeah, that is correct.
Blake Doncourt told you to work out whatever problem you were having with Jerry Langley on your own.
Yeah, essentially the same thing I've discussed with Ms. Chamberlain to handle my own issues.
His reaction made you disheartened?
Of course. I mean, I trusted Blake for so much of my life. As I discussed with Ms. Chamberlain, they were like a mentor to me. So to hear this adverse response from them was, of course, disheartening.
It also made you seething.
At the time, yeah, I mean, that reaction was quite temporary, but immediately that is how I felt.
Yes, immediately you applied to Terra's Greenery.
I mean, it takes a while to fill out job applications, so it wasn't the second after, but in a short period of time after that conversation with Blake, I did apply for Terra's. I felt like Lush had become so hostile that I needed to change work environments.
But you applied because you thought it would get Blake Doncourt's goat.
I believe that is the wording that I used on my affidavit. Yes, that is correct.
And you now work for Terra's Greenery, Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
I'm not sure if we are still their biggest competitor today. I'm not sure if I have knowledge of that, as I'm no longer involved with Lush, but I do currently work with Terra's Greenery, and it absolutely was the right change for me.
Ms. Durst, Terra's Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
As I've explained, I know it was in 2006. I know it was one of their biggest competitors, but now I'm not sure. But I know that they are, and of course, I'm proud of our company.
Ms. Durst, please keep your answer to the question. Let's move forward.
Okay, yeah, they are. They are. Oh, my apologies.
Ms. Durst, you were called by the plaintiff to testify.
I was, yes.
The plaintiff is suing Blake Doncourt's company.
Yes, Blake Doncourt is the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, yes.
The company you felt marginalized while working at?
I did, yes, as I've explained to you for
Run,
reasons, yes.
run by the person you felt betrayed you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the very beginning of your response. My apologies.
Run by the person who you feel betrayed you, correct?
Yeah, at that time, yeah, I felt as though Blake betrayed me, and yeah, Blake does still run the company.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Chamberlain, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. And just to make sure timers are ready.
I'm sure they are. Let's proceed.
Ms. Durst, could you tell me a little bit more about why you felt the need to leave Lush?
Yeah, Ms. Chamberlain, could you repeat your question one more time? I'm sorry, I think I'm just having a little bit of an audio issue over here.
Yeah, of course. Could you tell me a little bit more about why the reason you chose to leave Lush?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first became motivated, excuse me, to leave Lush in 2000.
Objection, Your Honor, out of the scope of the cross.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Your Honor, opposing counsel talked a lot about Ms. Durst leaving Lush and being fired from Lush, and I'm just clearing up that. It was very much in the scope.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
I had one question referring to the fact that Ms. Durst left, and I had no questions referring to why she left.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The issue of her leaving was addressed indirect. The issue of her leaving on direct implied by choice, corrected during cross that she was fired. I believe that opens up this area as to why she is no longer employed, leaving, being fired, or why. So overruled. Ms. Chamberlain, you may proceed.
Ms. Durst, can you just continue, or did you need me to re-ask my question?
You don't need to re-ask it. I can continue. I was initially motivated to leave Lush in 2005 because, as I've discussed with both you and Ms. Graham, I felt like the work environment had become so hostile that it just wasn't a place where I felt like I could grow. And so I was looking for other jobs. I found that Terrace was hiring product development engineers. And so I applied thinking that might be the right next step for me. And I had plans to leave and quit from Lush in 2005 and going into 2006. But Lush ultimately did fire me before I had the chance to quit on my own.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
And Ms. Graham, recross.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, your testimony is complete. You are excused. We'll now have the next and final witness at least the next witness for the plaintiff. And Ms. Madden, I believe you are on direct. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Ms. I'm going to say it's Vyrick or Vyrick. If you can correct my pronunciation.
Vyrick, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
Vyrick?
Vyrick, thank you. Ms. Vyrick, and looks like we've got everybody's names coming up at least. We'll wait for just a moment until Ms. Madden gets the name change up. You don't have to, but you had requested that, so.
All right, apologies, Your Honor.
That's all right.
All right, perfect. That should be awesome.
There we go. Ms. Madden is now up. You may call your witness.
Ready. Plaintiff calls Dakota Weirs to the stand.
And Ms. Weirs, you've been sworn. Ms. Madden, you may proceed.
Ready. Ms. Weirs, will you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My first is Dakota and my last is Weirs.
And Ms. Weirs, we've heard a lot about this case today. Can you please tell the jury more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Dakota. I'm 20 years old. I play the piano and I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And why are we here today?
We're here today because I am suing Lush Fertilizer for causing my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Let's talk more about before that diagnosis. What was your life like beforehand?
Before I was diagnosed, I had a very busy life. I had lots of hobbies. I was involved in my community, in my school community as well. I had a job.
Let's talk more about school. What kind of things would you do at school?
At school, I was a part of the NHS, the National Honor Society. I was part of the student government. I was in so many clubs, as many as I could get into.
Did you enjoy doing those things?
Yes, I loved doing it. I loved going to school.
And did you have time for anything else outside of school?
I mainly filled my free time with playing the piano and work, of course, but other than that, nothing else.
Let's talk more about work. Did you enjoy working?
It was easy enough and I had a pretty good pay. So yes, I said I enjoyed working.
And what kind of things would you do at your job?
I worked at Haven Landscaping. So, I worked at Haven Landscaping. So for work, I would spread fertilizer and grass seed. I was too young to mess with big machinery.
And how do you spread fertilizer?
Typically by hand.
And what were some of the products that you would use?
I don't know all the products by name, but I do know for a fact that we use Lush fertilizer.
And is this where you came in contact with Drufo?
Yes, it is.
And I also understand that you have a twin. Did they work at Lush with you?
No, my twin has a grass allergy, so the outdoory genes were mine.
And how long were you working at Haven Landscaping?
Let's see, I started working when I was 14, so I'd say 4-ish years.
And why were you working there for so long?
Oh, I had to work there to be able to pay for college.
And what were your plans for college?
I had actually become lucky enough to be able to get a full ride scholarship to Juilliard.
That's impressive. Why did you want to go to Juilliard?
I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Juilliard? It's one of the most prestigious musical schools in the United States, even maybe the world. It's an amazing school, and I've wanted to go there since I was a child.
And were you excited to attend?
Absolutely.
And what were you going to Juilliard for?
It would be for playing the piano.
And what did the piano mean to you?
Meant everything to me. I grew up with my grandfather playing the piano around me, and then when he passed, I felt the only way I could stay connected to him was if I played the piano. And so, yeah.
And can you still play the piano today?
No, unfortunately, I cannot play the piano anymore due to the effects the cancer has on me.
Let's talk more about that diagnosis. I understand this conversation can be difficult, so if you need a break, please let me know. What type of cancer do you have?
I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a cancer that affects the lymph nodes.
And what are your symptoms of having non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I get fatigue quite easily. I often have difficulty breathing. I bruise very easily, as well as swelling of the abdomen and weight loss.
And so what does that mean for your day-to-day life?
It really means I can't do all the things I used to enjoy doing.
And so how does that affect you mentally?
It's definitely taken a giant toll on my mental health.
And has this diagnosis been difficult for your family?
Yeah, it definitely has. It's breaking apart some of us. It's brought some of us together.
And I know school was very important to you. Does that mean you can still go to school?
No, I cannot go to Juilliard anymore as I got the scholarship for playing the piano and I can no longer do that.
And how does that feel not being able to go to school?
It's heartbreaking. I mean, I spent my entire life trying to get to where I am and I'm losing it all.
And if you're not going to school, what are your plans instead?
My plans for the future?
Yes.
I have no plans for the future. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a non-curable cancer. So I just sit around and wait for death to come knocking on my door.
And so what does that mean for you today?
Today and almost every day, I'm just trying to live my life, the last moments of my life, the best I can.
I'm sorry to hear that, Miss Weirs. I have one last question for you. Why do you believe that lush is the cause of your cancer?
I actually have two answers to that. One is I came across some documents stating that Drufo, an active ingredient in Lush fertilizer, is a known carcinogenic, as well as I have a twin, as mentioned before, and we grew up with all the exact same upbringings and all the exact same experiences except for my job, and they don't have cancer.
Alrighty, thank you, Miss Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Vurick, cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. My name is Ashlyn Berg.
Good morning.
Let's start by talking about your recent diagnosis. You were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That is correct.
And you believe that Lush fertilizer is the sole cause of your disease.
That's correct.
And that's because one day you saw a news story.
Yes. That's every day.
In which this particular news story talked about Drufo being linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That is correct. That's where I saw the leaked documents.
Yes, but you didn't see the documents themselves, did you?
Not entirely.
You only saw a news story.
Stating that Drufo was a known carcinogenic.
And after this single news story, you zeroed in on Lush fertilizer.
After a bit more research, yes.
Research that was only on Lush fertilizer, isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, eventually your research led you to learning that Drufo wasn't used everywhere.
That's correct. It's banned in the Europe countries.
But you don't know why it was banned, do you?
I'm pretty sure it's due to Drufo. But no, I don't know entirely.
But you don't know if that's linked to Drufo being a carcinogen, do you?
I do know that Drufo wasn't in the ingredients in the French label that I had seen.
So that's a yes to my question. You don't know if it's because Drufo is a carcinogen, do you?
I mean, it would make sense for that to be it, but no, I don't know entirely.
Okay. Now let's talk about Havens Landscaping. You worked at Havens Landscaping for 4 years.
4-ish, yes.
And during this time, you were primarily responsible for handling fertilizers.
Yes, I was too young to work with the other machinery.
But you also handled several different lawn chemicals.
Yes, but it was mostly fertilizer and grass seeds.
And all of these different fertilizers and chemicals came along with their own risks.
Sure, I guess.
But you don't know what risks for sure, do you?
No, I wasn't always paying attention to labels entirely.
And you also didn't research any of these other chemicals or fertilizers. Isn't that right?
That's correct, mostly because I didn't see anything on the news stating that they were carcinogenic.
So you don't know if any of these other chemicals or fertilizers were carcinogenic.
No, I don't.
Okay, Ms. Weirs, now let's talk about how you handled these chemicals. Your boss always told you to wear protective gear.
I think he did. I wasn't always paying attention to him.
Ms. Weirs, in your statement, you said he always told you to wear protective gear.
I believe he did, but I wasn't always paying attention.
Okay. But you chose not to.
I didn't see a reason to.
You chose to wear shorts and t-shirts
Yes, it was
when
hot.
handling dozens of different fertilizers and chemicals.
Yes, it was hot outside. I didn't see a reason to wear it.
It was too hot to protect yourself?
And I didn't see a reason to ever wear it.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And Ms. Madden, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Is my timekeeper ready? Ready. Ms. Weirs, can you explain more about why you didn't wear protective equipment?
Of course. I never really saw a reason to, as there was no exact warning label on the fertilizer, Lush fertilizer that I used. And it was just so hot outside and no one else was wearing it. So it's a 14-year-old. I didn't really want to or see a reason to.
And can you explain a little bit more about the protective equipment you had to wear?
I do believe my boss told us to wear long sleeves, mask, pants, and gloves, but I never really ended up wearing that stuff.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
And we seem to have a small time discrepancy on recross. What could I have a posting from the timekeepers on the two different times left? 6 seconds and 23. I'm going to go with the 23. I think that's within the realm. So 23 seconds if you wish to recross, Ms. Vurick.
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Weirs, that concludes your testimony. You are excused. Ms. Madden, any further witnesses for the plaintiff?
No further witnesses, Your Honor. The plaintiff rests.
Thank you. We'll now have the first witness for the defense. And Ms. Haverkamp, who will that witness be and who will the attorney be?
Your Honor, I'm not Ms. Haverkamp, but it will be me directing Blake Doncourt.
Oh, I only asked Ms. Haverkamp because she was lead, and I don't know who is going to be the attorney, but you are. So that will mean, let's see, we've got Mr. Doncourt will be the witness, and give me just a moment. Ms. Chamberlain will be crossing. And as soon as, yep, Ms. Chamberlain looks like she's right on top of it there. Ms. Vurick, you may proceed and call your witness.
At this time, we call Blake Doncourt to the stand.
And let's see, Mr. Doncourt, you have been sworn. Ms. Vurick, you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name is Blake Doncourt, spelled D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
What's your involvement in today's trial?
Well, I am the CEO of Lush Fertilizers, so I represent the company today.
What is Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is a company that I began just over 2 decades ago, and it was specifically developed to create safe, environmentally friendly, and effective fertilizer solutions, and to switch up the narrative and create a company that puts people over its profits.
What has your involvement in the company been so far?
Well, I've been here since the very beginning, and I really oversee everything that occurs within the company. So I oversee all the big decisions, of course, and all of our departments, including operations, marketing, sales, research and development, safety, and I also oversee our charitable wing, where we donate 10% of our profits every year to charitable efforts that clean up the oceans and clean nitrates out of the soil.
Objection, Your Honor. Character evidence.
And Ms. Vurick, Ms. Chamberlain, which specific part of that do you feel is character evidence, or is it the entire answer?
Regarding the charities, it's bolstering the company.
Ms. Vurick?
Your Honor, this is not being used to show a propensity to do anything or in order to bolster the company in any way. This question was simply used in order to show that Blake Doncourt has a deep understanding of the company, as he's been called in front of the court today in order to testify for Lush Fertilizer.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Your Honor, I do believe that this is character evidence still because it is quite obviously bolstering the company as it's supporting environmental charities and it's making it seem as though that's a big part of their company.
I'm thinking about this. This is a good issue. Haven't heard this issue before. So far, I don't believe I have heard character evidence, character of a witness, as opposed to character of a company. I'm not sure that it applies there. Now, it may be, he may later testify that it is his decision to do this, which may very well put character on him. That might be objectionable. At the moment, the fact that the company decides to use some of its profits for charity, I'm going to allow that as background. We'll see if there is further testimony about the actual character of this witness or any other witness. And maybe that will draw another objection. Otherwise, overruled for this time. Ms. Verrick, you may continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Doncourt, let's talk about the fertilizer itself. What is Lush fertilizer?
Lush fertilizer is a relatively new product on the agritech market, which utilizes the bonding agent Drufo to better bond the nitrogen and the other chemicals within the product, preventing the release of excess nitrates into the environment, making it overall much safer for the environment and for humans.
Who uses it?
The product is used by all sorts of people. It's used by farmers, landscaping companies, even home gardeners. The only group of people that the fertilizer is not meant to be used by would be children. We warn about that on our packaging, and we tell all users to keep the product out of reach of children, meaning anybody under the age of 18.
And what sort of dangers are associated with your product?
There are no major dangers associated with Lush fertilizer or Drufo. The only minor risks would be a risk of skin, eye, and respiratory irritation if proper procedures are not taken.
Excuse me, Your Honor, at this time, can we pause time? Our timekeeper was kicked out of the meeting.
Oh, yes. Let's confirm time. Time will stop. We'll confirm time now from both timekeepers. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
Well, at the moment, our timekeeper is not in the meeting, but there she is.
Just got back in.
There we go.
Can I get what the accurate time things were? Because I think I got kicked out right before an objection. Thank you. All right.
So everybody's on the same page? Sounds like it. Good. 2235 left on direct. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Doncourt, are there any dangers associated with your product?
No, there are no major dangers associated with Lush fertilizer. The only minor risks would be a risk of skin, eye, and respiratory irritation if proper safety procedures are not taken.
Now, has your company done anything in order to mitigate these risks?
Well, of course, that would only be right. We actually were not required by law to put any sort of warning label on our product just because of how safe it is. But we chose to anyways, and we recommend that all users wear long sleeve clothing, a N95 face mask, and eye protection whenever utilizing the product, just to mitigate those risks of irritation.
Switching gears a bit, let's talk about some of the people who've appeared in court today. Now, how do you know Carson Durst?
I unfortunately know Carson Durst because she was a former family friend and a former employee of Lush Fertilizer.
What were their job at the company?
Carson Durst worked in research and development and specifically worked on researching some of the possible side effects that Drufo may have.
What were those findings?
The findings of Carson Durst's study, as well as every other study conducted in those labs, was that there was no link between Drufo and any sort of major health condition, including cancer.
Now, how was Carson Durst's performance at the company?
I don't really like to talk bad about employees, but to be honest with you, her performance was not at the standard that we expect here at Lush Fertilizer. She underwent many performance reviews and they were mostly negative, and she even had to be put on a performance improvement plan at one point.
Did she ever come to you with any concerns of any nature?
Carson Durst never approached me with any concerns over the carcinogenicity of that product. She approached me to complain about her managers because I think she thought that since we were family friends that I would overrule her managers, but that was an issue between her and her managers, and that's what I told her.
Does Carson Durst still work at the company?
Thankfully for Lush Fertilizer and the success of the company, Carson Durst no longer works at Lush.
What were the circumstances of Carson Durst leaving the company?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a clean break in any sense. We discovered that
we're having a technical problem, which you can all probably see. Mr. Anderson needs to reconnect. Time will stop, of course.
Okay.
Let's get him reconnected and then and it may require, I don't know that he knows this, but hopefully he knows this.
We just sent someone in to tell him that he froze, so hopefully that problem will be solved.
Oh, you're in the same location, just a different room. Okay, great. We've gone quite a while without a problem, which is amazing.
It was too good to be true.
While we are waiting, it looks as though Ms. Vierick, you're in the upper floor of an office building somewhere where I can see horrible smog.
Actually, it's not too bad. Those are the blinds.
Oh.
Yeah. It just don't work too well.
Ms. Chamberlain, it looks as though you're in a courtroom somewhere.
Yeah.
Which county?
I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not because we're in but
fair enough. Well, it's just a county, not a school.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it looks like my old courtroom, but we'll leave it at that. Most courtrooms look the same. There we go. Mr. Duncourt, do you have audio?
Yes, my apologies, Your Honor.
No problem. It's not anyone's fault, just a technical problem. It looks like we're all set. Are our timekeepers set?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, looks like we're all set. Ms. Vierick, you may proceed. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Doncourt, you were talking about the circumstances of Carson Durst leaving the company.
Yes, I was. It was not a clean break whatsoever. We found that Carson Durst was working for our biggest rival, Terrace Greenery, while she was employed by us. And so, of course, we were forced to fire Carson at that time and take her to court over her violation of our non-disclosure and non-compete agreements.
Why would you call the company that they went to your rival company?
Well, they are another agritech company that develops fertilizers, and coincidentally, as soon as Carson Durst began working at the company, they began developing a product which is essentially a carbon copy of Lush Fertilizer.
Now, earlier, Mr. Doncourt, we talked about Miss Carson Durst's findings. Does she stand by these findings?
Once again, coincidentally, As soon as Carson Durst began working for our rival Terrace Greenery, she retracted her support for all of the claims that she made within her previous studies.
Now, throughout the trial, Carson Durst has referred to emails. What do you know about these emails?
The emails that she refers to, they don't exist. They were never found in our email servers by the plaintiff's attorneys, and that's because they simply don't exist.
Do you know of anyone else that has appeared in court today that have made claims that Drufo is dangerous?
The main other person would be Casey Rogers.
What have they claimed?
Casey Rogers claims to have conducted a study that connected Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
When did you first hear about this study?
Rather strangely, I only first heard about this study in the litigation of this case.
And were you able to see this study?
Eventually, I was able to take a look at it, yes.
When you looked at this, did you notice any problems within it?
Well, I can't speak to some of the more scientific aspects of the study. However, having seen many of these types of studies, I did notice that it wasn't peer-reviewed, meaning it wasn't submitted to an independent board of scientists for review. And essentially, that just means that we have to take his word for everything included within his research and all of his conclusions.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, would you ever authorize the release of a product to the public that you knew caused cancer or any other life-threatening diseases?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
When I started Lush Fertilizer, I wanted to make a company that put its customers and its employees and the environment above its profits. And of course, creating a dangerous product would not live up to that mission whatsoever. But I get it. I'm a CEO, and you might not want to believe me, but believe me when I say this. Creating a dangerous or carcinogenic product would be bad for profits and bad for business. It would absolutely destroy Lush Fertilizer. So there simply is no incentive for us to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Chamberlain, cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. And before I begin, I just want to make sure that timekeepers are ready.
And they are. Thank you very much.
Mr. Doncourt, you built Lush from the ground up.
It was a long, hard journey, I'll tell you that. Many long nights at the office, but we did eventually build into the wonderful company that we have today.
You spent day and night to get the company to where it is today.
Of course, I mean, it was definitely a team effort. I wouldn't say it was just me, but everybody was committed to making the best company we could.
And you mentioned it was a team effort. You couldn't have done this alone.
Of course not. I don't have the science background or the engineering background that we needed at Lush Fertilizer.
You also had to have a little bit of financial help from investors.
Yes, just as with any startup, you need some money to get started. And so we did have some investors.
And we'll come back to those investors in just a little while. You would consider yourself as well as your company environmentalists?
Of course, that's exactly why I created Lush Fertilizer, to create a environmentally friendly fertilizer solution in comparison to other fertilizer products, which in general harm the environment.
You even donate a portion of your profits to charities.
Precisely, and that's something that we are so proud of here at Lush. We really want to make sure that we give back to the community and to the environment.
No,
I'll interrupt you right now. I'm going to reaffirm my earlier ruling regarding the charity issue, either for a corporation or for this witness, because it has now been brought up on cross. You may continue, Ms. Chamberlain.
Now, moving on a little bit to your relationship with Carson Durst. You know Carson Durst?
I unfortunately know Carson Durst, yes.
You've known them for almost their whole life.
Yes, I would say so, at least since high school.
They were almost like a second child to you.
I would say that, yes.
They even hung out at your house a lot with your child?
With Charlie, yes, that's his name. So proud of those two and everything that they did in soccer. I mean, they won the state championship their senior year.
And after Carson graduated college, you gave her a job.
Yeah, I felt bad for Carson. They didn't have a job at that time, and I thought I could possibly use their skills.
And they acted ungrateful for the many opportunities you had given them throughout their lives.
Of course, as you said, I felt like Carson was a second child to me, and when Carson went to work for the rival, it felt like my child was betraying me.
Now, moving on a little bit to your product, Drufo, you made the choice to not bake Drufo.
Yes, there was no need to bake the product.
You needed this money for other reasons, such as the financial investors.
Well, that is not why we chose not to bake the product. We chose not to bake the product because there is no elevated risk of carcinogenicity within the product.
But one of the largest reasons was having to pay back these investors.
I wouldn't say that was one of the largest reasons. Of course, if the product had higher levels of carcinogenicity, then we would bake the product. So first and foremost, there just was no need to bake the product.
Now, just for clarification, did you say this wasn't one of the largest reasons?
Look, there are many reasons for not baking the product. The main and first consideration that I had when making that decision was whether or not it would affect our customers. And we found that there was no elevated risk of carcinogenicity. So that was our first and foremost concern.
But Mr. Doncourt, you needed these earnings to pay back the investors.
We did end up using the extra earnings to pay back the investors, yes.
But baking Drufo would have gotten rid of any risk, correct?
There was no elevated risk of carcinogenicity within the product, so there was no need to.
There was a slight risk, though, correct?
There is always a slight risk with any chemical product in the environment, and there's always a slight risk of pretty much any product coming with a small level of carcinogenicity.
That was a yes, correct?
Yes.
And you made the choice to not bake out this small risk.
There was no elevated risk of carcinogenicity. Look, the risk of carcinogenicity within Drufo is no higher than the risk of carcinogenicity within the clothes I'm wearing right now.
Mr. Doncourt, that was a yes, correct?
Yes, we chose not to bake because there was no elevated risk.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Varick, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, why did you choose to not bake your fertilizer?
Lush fertilizer was much safer than any other fertilizer on the market. It was, in fact, so safe we didn't even need to put a warning label on it. The risk of carcinogenicity within the product is not elevated above any other normal thing you would come in contact with in your daily life. So we chose not to bake the product because there is such low risk.
What would you have done if you found that Drufo was carcinogenic?
Well, of course, if we had found a high risk of carcinogenicity within the product, we would never have released it to the markets.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And Mr. Doncourt, that completes your testimony. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We'll now have the next witness for the defendant, and I'm assuming that will be Skylar Weirs, and that Ms. Graham will be on direct. And Ms. Madden on cross, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, wait a minute here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Graham on direct and Ms. Madden on cross. And we have everybody, let's see, Ms. Madden is changing names on the screen there. We'll wait for that. There we go. And Ms. Varick, Ms. Graham, you may call your witness.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
And Ms. Weirs, you have been sworn. Ms. Graham, you may continue.
Good morning, Ms. Weirs. My name is Kira Graham.
Good morning, Ms. Graham. My name is Skylar Weirs. That's W-E-I-R-S.
Ms. Weirs, what do you do for a living?
I am an investigative journalist for the Rationalist magazine.
How does what you do for work relate to today's case?
I actually just authored a series of articles about the conflict between individual health and corporate policy, and a part of that series was on Drufo.
How did you research for these articles?
Oh goodness, I spent a considerable amount of time just, looking at different research publications written by various agri-tech companies, as well as the references used in those research publications. And I tracked down a wealth of information maintained by the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
Would you consider yourself an expert in agri-tech?
Absolutely, I would. My knowledge is based on historical as well as general and statistical information.
And would you say that Drufo and its effects on people and the environment are part of agri-tech?
Definitely, especially modern agri-tech.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense requests that the court recognize Skylar Weirs as an expert in the field of agri-tech, as we have shown that she has spent considerable time researching agri-tech companies' publications, the references in those publications, a wealth of information from the USDA along with the NASDA, which were the requirements in your pretrial order.
I have issued an order on this. Is your qualification, though, confined to her agricultural technology research on Drufo, or is she going to testify to other areas of agri-tech?
She will be testifying to the other areas of agri-tech and how that affects why we are here today.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Madden, considering my previous ruling, any objection to qualifying this witness as an expert in agricultural technology?
Yes, Your Honor. May we do a voir dire?
Yes, you may.
Alrighty, Ms. Weirs. Let's talk more about your education. You graduated high school
I did.
and you went to college.
No, I did not go to college.
So you chose not to go to college?
No, I chose not to go to college. It wasn't really the route for me. I became a journalist instead.
Yeah. So aside from education, you are some kind of scientist.
No, I'm not a scientist. I'm a journalist.
So you don't work in a laboratory?
No, I'm a journalist. I wouldn't need to.
And you don't do field research either?
I haven't worked specifically in a field, no. However, I am very well versed in looking at field research and being able to interpret what that means.
So you're not a doctor either?
No.
You don't have any medical training?
No, I'm not.
So your writing experience is based off a high school education, correct?
It's based off my education as well as just my work experience. I have been working for the Rationalist magazine and I have editors who look at my work.
But your formal education from writing is only based off of a high school experience.
Formally, yes. However, there are a plethora of other ways to be educated. And I think if we can't trust the United States Department of Agriculture or the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture to educate people on their fields of study, then we can't really trust anybody.
Okay, let's talk more about those resources. So you gather your own resources, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that includes company publications?
Yes, from various agri-tech companies.
And you're aware that those companies could have bias?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Ms. Madden.
Your Honor, I'm simply asking these questions to understand the possible bias that Ms. Weirs would have put into her article, which is giving her the qualifications here today.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
The reliability of the sources Ms. Weirs read or the bias she may have goes to the weight of her testimony, not the expert qualifications, which are what a voir dire is for.
Ms. Madden, last word.
These qualifications are being given through her article. If her article cannot be seen as a reliable testimony, then she should not be testifying as an expert here today.
Actually, under the case law and the rule, and my previous order on this, there were certain qualifications that this witness had to have in order to testify as indicated in my order. That does not seem to be challenged here. But what is being challenged is her reliability, the reliability of her testimony, which is distinguished from the credibility, meaning the weight that the jury would place. That is the jury's business, credibility and weight. But the reliability is a ruling that the court must make. So and reliability and credibility, the reliability is the fact that this is not fake science. I have to decide that. So I'm going to allow the question, although let's be brief, Ms. Madden.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you're aware that companies have bias.
Yes, and I did take this into account. I am a journalist. I have to be able to discern bias.
But you are aware that bias could have been placed into your articles?
It could have, and that would have been taken
So
into
that was a yes?
No, I would never put actual bias and not show the other side of the story. My journal, The Rationalist, is a magazine that is trying to inform and educate our readers. I would never give one side of the story without letting the other side have their turn.
Ms. Weirs, I simply asked if you were aware that bias could have gotten into your article, and that was a yes, correct?
As I answered, no, without the other side being shown. If there would have been a bias, it would have been explained as to why, and then the other side would have been shown as to why maybe that bias was true or not.
Ms. Weirs, it was possible the bias could have ended up into your article, yes?
The same question has been asked now and answered. I have to make this decision. I have the information. Let's move on.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I object to this being a witness. Although they do have a formal education, they do not have adequate knowledge to be able to testify as an expert today.
Your Honor, Mayor's Palm?
Yes, you may.
You already ruled on this objection in your pretrial order, and as we have met the requirements shown, and we have proven that she has experience and knowledge under Rule 702, we request that you follow your pretrial order and allow Ms. Weirs to testify as an expert witness.
I'm going to qualify Ms. Weirs as an expert witness in agricultural technology based on my previous rule that the qualifications of having a background and looking at the articles has been satisfied. In addition, I believe that now that the issue of reliability of her testimony has been raised, that her methods are sufficiently reliable to give an opinion. The jury may consider the fact that of the high school education, of the short time that was looking, that she has been looking at this issue as to the weight or credibility of her testimony. That'll be up to the jury. So, Ms. Graham, you may continue.
Ms. Weirs, what were you specifically researching in reference to Drufo?
I was looking for whether there was a definitive causal link between the exposure to Drufo and development of cancer.
From your research, were you able to find a causal link?
No, I wasn't.
Were you able to find in your research why some people believed there was?
Yes, and unfortunately, it's quite common with products such as these. It was a pseudoscientific hit job by a rival company.
Why would Lush be targeted for a pseudoscientific hit job?
Well, Drufo, their main product, their main ingredient used in their products, is an absolutely revolutionary ingredient, and any rival company worth their snuff would try to get that off the market.
Why did you call Drufo revolutionary?
Simply the way Drufo was designed, it's made so that, the people are put first, and they're trying to maximize customer safety by, reducing the solubility of the different active ingredients used in their products.
Why does it matter to contain the solubility of the ingredients in their products?
Well, one of the active ingredients is nitrogen, and this can be leached out into groundwater sources and converted to nitrates, which can lead to algal blooms, which then leads to dead zones, or even blue baby syndrome when consumed.
And how does Lush fertilizer compare to other fertilizers?
it's wholly safer than almost any other fertilizer on the market because Drufo, reduces the solubility of that nitrogen being turned into the nitrates. And it's also used a whole less frequently than other fertilizers. So you're being exposed to the synthetic nitrogen way less often.
Ms. Spears, let's talk about your relationship to the plaintiff. Please tell us about how you are related to Dakota Weirs.
Dakota is my twin.
If Dakota Weirs is your twin, why are you here testifying against her?
I mean, I love my twin, of course I do. We haven't been the closest, but it just seems to me that in all of her pain about her illness, she's gone against the one company that designs their products for this sort of thing not to happen. And so I'm here to testify about my research and about what I know is to be true.
Ms. Weirs, did you form any expert opinions for today's case?
Yes, I did.
And what are those expert opinions?
There is absolutely no link between the exposure to Drufo and the development of any cancer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Madden, Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Are my timekeepers ready?
Looks like it. Let's go ahead.
Alrighty, Ms. Weirs. Drufo had multiple carcinogenic properties, correct?
Drufo, no.
Well, it does contain nitrogen, yes?
Nitrogen by itself isn't carcinogenic.
Nitrogen is not carcinogenic?
Nitrates are, but nitrogen itself can't be. It's a chemical.
So nitrogen is not carcinogenic.
Nitrogen by itself. Nitrates are.
Ready, Ms. Weirs? And you wrote an affidavit in this case?
Yes, I did.
If I could have co-counsel please screen share Ms. Weirs' affidavit.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a violation of Rule 613B. Ms. Madden must give Ms. Weirs a chance to explain or deny the statement before extrinsic evidence is published to the jury.
Fair enough. What is the statement that is alleged to be in the affidavit?
Ms. Weirs stated in her affidavit the nitrogen is a known carcinogenic.
And you may ask that to the witness and see if she admits or denies that.
Your Honor, I have confirmed that with the witness. Would you like me to ask her again?
Yes, please.
Ms. Weirs, nitrogen is a known carcinogenic, yes?
That this appears in her statement.
Yes, that this appears in your statement.
Nitrates are a known carcinogen.
All right, now if you wish to impeach her, you may.
Ready. If I could please have co-counsel screen share Ms. Weirs' affidavit. If you could go to line 63, please. Oh, apologies. Could you scroll to the bottom? Ms. Weirs, that is your signature on this affidavit, correct?
Yes, it is.
Right, if we could go back up to line 63. Please read along silently while I read aloud. Nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer and methylglobinemia. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Alrighty, co-counsel can stop screen sharing. Thank you. Alrighty, Ms. Weirs, let's continue. So Drufo also doubles as a pesticide, yes?
Yes, it is.
And that makes the product efficient.
Yes, it does.
And pesticides are by definition a poison.
Well, not by definition. I mean, there are some herbicide soaps that can be used, but on the whole, usually they are meant to kill target species.
Okay, and pesticides also contain many carcinogenic elements, correct?
Virtually every pesticide does, yes.
But pesticides do, yes?
They do, yes.
Alrighty, excuse me, sorry. All fertilizers, including Lush products, are unsafe, correct?
No.
So all fertilizers are safe,
Lush products are safe.
but Drufo is still a safe product.
Well, Drufo is an ingredient and it's designed to make Lush products safe, yes.
Even though it contains 2 carcinogenic elements.
No, it doesn't contain any carcinogenicity.
Let's continue on. So let's talk about the reason that you're here today. You write articles, correct?
Yes, I do.
And if you don't write articles, you wouldn't get paid.
No, that's not correct.
So you work for The Rationalist, right? Let's back up a bit.
I do work for The Rationalist magazine, yes.
And The Rationalist pays you?
Some money. I mean, my writing isn't exactly lucrative.
But The Rationalist does pay you?
Yes, but not exactly a living wage.
Yeah, so if you don't write an article, then you don't get paid.
No, that's not true.
So you would get paid regardless of...
Well, I have 2 jobs, so I would still be getting paid if I didn't exactly write every single time.
Okay, so The Rationalist is a quarterly magazine, correct?
Yes, yes, they are.
Meaning they're published 4 times a year?
Yes, that's what quarterly means.
So if your article doesn't get published in that quarter, you wouldn't get paid for your article?
I don't believe that's how magazines work. I'm not paid by article. I mean, I do have deadlines and I meet them, but it's not exactly a paid by article type of situation.
Alrighty, but sorry, excuse me. So you also work at Applebee's, correct?
I do.
And that job depends on tips?
It does.
And so those tips can be inconsistent?
Yes.
And so if your writing doesn't do well, you may not meet ends meet that month, correct?
No, as I stated previously, I'm not paid by article.
Alrighty, let's continue on. So you challenge agri-tech industries in your writing, correct?
In my early days, yes, I did.
Alrighty, and that's writing without a college education?
It's writing from work experience, yes.
Alrighty, and so when that writing becomes more popular, you'll get more job opportunities.
One would hope, but I am happy working at The Rationalist.
Yeah, and that means more readers to your articles.
Yes.
Right, and that more popularity to The Rationalist.
Yes, I believe wholeheartedly in their cause, so more readers is always a good thing.
And then more money from The Rationalist in your paycheck?
No.
And so aside from that, you have some debt, correct?
I don't really see how that's relevant. That doesn't affect my testimony in any way.
But you do have debt, yes?
Again, I don't really see how that's relevant, but yes.
Okay, and that debt's from gambling.
Sports gambling again, but not relevant at all.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
The court will decide issues of relevance. The witness will refrain from commenting on whether it is relevant. That is up to an attorney to object to. We now have a relevance objection. Ms. Madden, why is this relevant?
This goes to establishing the financial bias that Ms. Weirs may have in this case.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Madden has already established that she has a debt, which I did not object to because in fact it does do that. But the fact that she got it from gambling is more prejudicial than probative under 403 and is not relevant as to how she got that debt under 401.
Ms. Madden?
Your Honor, this still goes to establishing the financial bias within this case.
Well, the issues now on the table, I will allow questions on the fact that she is in debt and how she will resolve that debt by perhaps publishing more articles or saying something. I mean, the implication is she may be saying something in an article that she doesn't need to say, but she needs the money, so she publishes the article. But the reason for the debt, why is that relevant? Why is it not just the debt that is relevant and not the reason why she is debt being a gambler? Why is being a gambler relevant, Ms. Madden?
This goes to explaining the financial bias. Understanding where that debt comes from is important to understanding the amount that Ms. Weirs has accumulated.
All right, I'm going to sustain the objection in part, meaning that the issue of the gambling does not appear to be relevant. The issue of the debt, however, is relevant. So you may question Ms. Weirs about her debt and why she would perhaps fabricate an issue in an article just to make money from the Rationalist, from the magazine, to pay off her debt. But the reason for the debt not being relevant, being a gambler. So I will instruct the jury to disregard the testimony of either the question or the testimony about gambling. So let's continue on that basis. If you wish to talk more about her debt, you may do so.
All righty, thank you, Your Honor. Your articles have been advertised a lot today in court, right, Ms. Weirs?
I wouldn't say a lot today, but they were mentioned.
And it's a possibility that they could increase in popularity because of this case, right?
It's a possibility. I'm not really counting on it.
And now let's talk about your relationship with Dakota. She's suing Lush, correct?
Yes, she is.
For giving her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That's what she believes.
And you're testifying on behalf of Lush today.
Yes, I am.
And let's talk more about that debt and the relationship with your sister. Your father cut you off financially because of all of the debt, correct?
After a while, yes, he did.
And that made you upset, right?
A little. I mean, I was getting help and then I wasn't. Made me a little upset.
And Dakota was supposed to go off to college, right?
Yes.
And now she's sick with cancer, correct?
Yes, that is what happened.
And your father has still offered to pay for those medical bills, even though she's no longer going off to college, right?
Yes, and I think it's very noble of him to do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Graham, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, Ms. Madden asked you about nitrogen and how it was linked to these things, but you are an expert. Please tell us why nitrogen is linked to these things.
Yes, so I said it's known to contribute because it contributes through nitrates. Something can't be affected just because of simple nitrogen. That wouldn't be possible. However, nitrogen is known to contribute these things after being fixed by nitrogen fixing bacteria, and then that turns into the nitrates, which then causes these horrible cancers or blue baby syndrome.
And Ms. Weirs, what will happen to you financially through your father if Dakota does not win this lawsuit?
I mean, it's honestly...
Objection, Your Honor.
And the objection is what?
Speculation. This witness would have no knowledge of how her father's finances would be affected by this case.
Ms. Graham.
I was not asking about her father's finances. I asked how, if her father would continue not giving her money or would give her money if Dakota were to win or lose this lawsuit. And she would know, as Miss Weirs is the daughter and sister to Dakota Weirs and Mr. Weirs, the father.
Why is that, Ms. Graham, not, why is this witness not speculating about that?
Miss Weirs has personal knowledge. She knows that if Dakota wins this lawsuit, her father will stop giving money to Dakota Weirs and that therefore will have more money in the will. And Miss Weirs knows that if Dakota loses this lawsuit, which she is hoping for, as Miss Weirs is targeting the wrong person, she will still not have any money, and therefore the finances go against her.
I'm going to sustain the objection as the question was asked of what will the father do? Who knows what the father will do? That would be speculation. If you wish to re-ask the question so it is not speculative, you may do so, but otherwise asking specifically what someone, a third party, is going to do in the future would be speculation. So if you wish to rephrase it some way that's not speculation, you may, but otherwise that question is withdrawn. You may proceed.
Ms. Weirs, are you aware of how your father will handle his money after this lawsuit?
Yes, I am.
Ms. Spears, how will that happen?
Well, if
You first need to establish how she has that knowledge. Otherwise, we're not past speculation yet.
Ms. Spears, how are you aware?
Well, I am my father's daughter. We do talk about our finances. And again, this would be directly impacting me. So we have had these conversations.
And in those conversations, how would it affect you?
Well, if Dakota were to win this lawsuit, then obviously she would have the money to be able to pay her medical expenses on her own, but I would still not be receiving any money from my father. And if she were to lose, then he would be shouldering the cost of these medical expenses, and I would, again, still not be receiving any money. So I really don't gain financially through my family either way.
No further questions, Your Honor.
And Ms. Madden, recross on those issues?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Weirs, your testimony is complete. You are excused. We'll now have the third witness for the defendants. Ms. Haverkamp, you appear to be lead on this, or doing direct exam of the next witness, with Ms. Yet doing cross. And let's make sure we have everybody on screen. I have Ms. Yet. And
I'm sorry, Your Honor. We seem to be having a bit of a technical difficulty. I do not
that's
know.
all
if
right. Not a
camera
problem. We can wait.
Are you able to see me? I'm unaware if my camera is working.
No, cannot see you. I can hear you though.
If we could pause times briefly to get this resolved.
Sure, of course, time is paused. Yes. I always think it's good to have a 6-year-old around to fix these technical problems. We're good on time. This is not an issue.
Your Honor, at this time, we're gonna real quick hop out of the meeting just in an attempt to get our video back working.
No problem.
I still cannot seem to get the video to be working, Your Honor. We will be right back. We have another ability to try to attempt this. Sorry.
Okay, well, we'll give it another try. If not, you know, worst case scenario, we can proceed with you on audio, but certainly we would rather have your video too. But let's give it another shot to try another camera maybe.
Your Honor, we are currently opening up another laptop that we will join on.
Ah, great. And this goes should go unsaid, but this is nobody's fault. No one gets graded down for this. This is just a technical problem. And if you'd like to throw your name up there, if you can, that'd be great.
Sorry, Your Honor. There's
right.
audio difficulties now. I apologize.
Now I know where you are, at least. It's all right.
Can you all see me now? Sorry.
I can see you and hear you. And if you'd use the upper
I'm so
right
sorry.
corner,
I can't seem to hear you.
you cannot hear us.
One moment, please. Sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem.
I believe that the problems have been resolved. I'm so sorry.
And can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay. And we've got the timekeepers are all ready again. And now I need, that's right. We haven't even started this witness yet. So Ms. Haverkamp, you are doing direct. Ms. Yet is doing cross, and you may call your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams, you've been sworn. Ms. Haverkamp, you may proceed.
Good morning, Dr. Williams. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name is Devin Williams. That's spelled W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
Let's begin with your professional education. Please
All right.
describe your education.
Of course, first began when I got my Bachelor's of Science in Toxicology at Colorado State University. After this, I obtained my master's degree, again, in forensic toxicology at CSU. I later went on to earn my PhD in toxicology, again, at CSU.
Do you have any postdoctoral education?
I attended a post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Tell us a little bit about your professional experience.
Of course. Well, let's go back to when I got my Bachelor's of Science. After this, I worked at the Larimer County office of the Chief Medical Examiner Toxicologist. After I earned my PhD, I worked as an assistant professor at CU Denver Anschutz Medical Campus, where I taught toxicology and pathophysiology with the division of pharmacology and medicinal chemistry. At the same time, I worked as an assistant professor at CSU School of Pharmacy.
From your education and experience, are there any particular skills that you have gained?
From spending over a decade in this field, I'm able to identify toxic chemicals and the effects of those chemicals using biomolecular and biochemical markers.
How have you applied these skills further in your career?
Well, I teach 3 courses all in toxicology at the University of New Mexico.
Where do you work now?
Currently, I lead the labs at Lush Fertilizer, the toxicology and research labs. I also am the outgoing chair at the ethics committee.
How long have you been in research and development?
Started my career with Lush about 12 years ago.
How long have you been on the toxicology side of that?
I've led the labs for 7 years now.
Are there any particular skills that you use daily in your work as a toxicologist?
Statistics are an integral tool for a toxicologist to use on a day-to-day basis. Personally, I use statistics every day in my line of work to come to accurate conclusions about the data I analyze.
Do you hold any certifications within your field?
I have multiple certifications, all in toxicology in 4 states: Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming.
Have you authored any publications?
I've authored 6 publications, 3 of which have been submitted and published. 1 was submitted and awaiting publication, and the other 2 are currently being worked on.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense requests that the court recognize Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in the field of pharmacotoxicology with a specialization in occupational chemicals, with a knowledge and use in statistics, as his testimony will assist the jury in determining a fact and issue.
And Ms. Yett, any objection to that designation, pharmacological toxicology, with those additional additions of occupational chemistry and statistics?
No objections, Your Honor.
Dr. Williams is so qualified. Ms. Haverkamp, you may proceed.
Dr. Williams, we've heard a lot about DRUFO. What is DRUFO?
DRUFO is a constituent chemical bonding agent within Lush Fertilizer.
What was your role in the development of DRUFO?
I led the labs that developed DRUFO.
Now, is Lush containing DRUFO sold worldwide?
Lush is sold worldwide, however, Lush containing DRUFO is not, no.
What is your understanding as to why this is?
Specifically in the European Union, under the EU's nitrate directive, more than an incidental accumulation of nitrate cannot be sold within its area.
So how does this relate back to DRUFO?
Well, although DRUFO has nitrogen, it does not produce nitrates because of the DRUFO, the bonding agent. However, through lab tests, this can change.
So why did the European Union's nitrate directive prohibit the sale of Lush containing DRUFO?
Well, it was just that they did lab tests where they added all kinds of bacteria that you'll never find in real world environments to try to get it to produce nitrate.
Are you aware of any other reasons?
No, this outlaw of DRUFO is not concerned over any cancer risks.
Now, let's talk about Dr. Rogers. Have you read Dr. Rogers' study in this case?
Yes.
And have you fully reviewed the conclusions that are made within this study?
Yes, I have.
In your expert opinion, would you say that this study was a valid one?
No.
Why is that?
Well, the way I see it is it's a case of confirmation bias. See, Dr. Rogers interpreted their study as confirmation of their preconceived beliefs. In other words, they shaped the evidence to fit what conclusions they wanted to see.
Would you explain what a valid study within your field would look like?
Specifically in today's case, a valid study would look like comparing farm laborers who work with fertilizers containing DRUFO to farm laborers who work with fertilizers not containing DRUFO.
How is this different from Dr. Rogers' study?
Dr. Rogers compared farm laborers who work with fertilizers containing DRUFO to people who don't work at farms at all. I mean, these people have completely different lifestyles.
Why are these different lifestyles important?
Well, different lifestyles lead to different environments, and different environments lead to different environmental exposures. It's like comparing someone who works at an iPhone factory to someone who grows oranges in their backyard. Completely different lifestyles and completely different environmental exposures.
Going back to this case in particular, does Drufo cause cancer?
I can't answer if Drufo causes cancer because too much of anything can cause cancer. I mean, even eating too much tuna can cause cancer.
Were there any particular skills that you used to shape this conclusion?
I'm confident in the use of statistics in shaping my expert opinion.
What did the statistics in the evaluation of this case show?
Drufo is not correlated with a statistically significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma cases or any other cancer cases. In addition to this, you have to take into account the random element.
What do you mean by the random element?
Well, in some groups, there is a randomly higher amount of people that get cancer than other groups. That's because people can randomly get cancer. It would be helpful if I could give an example of this.
Please do.
Well, it's like flipping a coin. No matter how many times you flip it, you always land on a heads or a tails. However, if you flip a coin 1,000 times, you'll almost never get 500 heads and 500 tails. This is because of that random element. You need to take into account that element so you come to accurate conclusions about the data.
So how does this random element reflect back to this case in particular?
On top of Drufo already being unlikely to have caused Mr. Weir's cancer, the random element makes it even more unlikely.
Dr. Williams, were you able, to a reasonable degree of scientific probability, to determine what caused Mrs. Weir's cancer?
It's impossible to know exactly what in the environment could have caused Miss Weir's cancer. However, through statistics, it is far too unlikely for Drufo to have caused her cancer today.
Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions.
Ms. Yet, cross-exam.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And before I begin, could I get a quick time check?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see it yet here. Oh, wait a minute. That's because, okay, never mind. Sometimes my screen page is up, sometimes it doesn't. 457, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning.
You work for Lush, right?
I do. I lead the toxicology labs.
And Lush chose you to come testify here today about the possible toxicity of Drufo, right?
They picked me to share my studies in the labs that I lead, showing how Drufo is not toxic.
Okay, but the possible toxicity of Drufo is why we're here, right?
The belief of a possible toxicity.
Okay, thank you. We can move on. One of the reasons that they chose you to testify here today was because you've been with the company for a pretty long time, right?
12 years. And in addition to that, I lead the toxicology labs. That's why they chose me. And I also am the outgoing chair of the ethics committee.
Right. So when you were hired on at Lush, you were first hired as a technician, right?
That's correct. I worked around the labs.
But you were then promoted to actually lead the labs at Lush, correct?
I was, yes.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit to Drufo. You spent a pretty long time on Direct talking about how good Drufo was for the environment, right?
Yes.
But Drufo is banned in the EU, correct?
That's correct. However, it's not due to any cancer risks.
Right. It's because of the amount of nitrate accumulation in labs, right?
Within lab tests specifically, not within the environment.
Yeah, thank you. So in order to continue selling Lush products in the EU, the company took Drufo out of them, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so Lush fertilizer can make the product without Drufo in it.
When they make the product without Drufo in it, it does take more of the product to use and is less efficient. However,
right. It's also worse for the environment, correct?
Not necessarily, no.
Taking Drufo.
Taking Drufo out of the product would make it worse for the environment. However, that's just because you have to use more of it. It would make it similar to other fertilizers.
Okay, thank you. But it is worse for the environment.
Just because you have to use more of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Did you ever hear about the possibility of baking Drufo?
Earlier today I did, and I've heard it around at work, yeah.
Okay, but so you heard Blake Doncourt testify earlier in court today, right?
Yeah, I heard him say that baking was not necessary as Drufo already was so low in its levels of toxicities.
Okay, but Blake Doncourt never asked your opinion on baking Drufo?
That's not in my statement. Would you like me to answer?
Just from your previous work experience, Blake Doncourt never asked your opinion on baking Drufo?
Again, that's not in my statement. So would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, just answer to the best of your ability.
Yeah, Blake asked me a few times about that.
Okay. So we'll back up just a bit to your employment. You are a paid employee of Lush Fertilizer, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and you stated in direct that you actually led the labs that Drufo developed correct?
I lead the labs that developed Drufo, yes. I wasn't there when Drufo was developed. However, I came in after it was developed, and now I lead the labs.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was just clarifying. So, but by the time that you got to Lush, you say that 50% of the original development team for Drufo had left, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's a pretty significant part of that team, right?
Yeah, it was a good amount of the team.
Yeah, a pretty big number of people.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on a little bit. So you were talking a bit about Dr. Rogers' study, and you can confirm that Dr. Rogers studied 3 different groups within their study, right?
Yes.
And not just 2, like you stated on direct.
Oh, no, those are 2 of the groups within the study. There are 3 groups.
There are 3 groups. Okay, thank you. And you do acknowledge that, oh, I'm sorry. You do acknowledge that non-Hodgkin lymphoma is environmental, right?
Yes.
It's not genetic?
That's correct.
It's caused from working in an environment.
It could be caused from anything except genetics, from any environment, yes.
Okay, but it is environmental.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Ms. Haverkamp, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, why are you here testifying today?
Look, I'm the outgoing chair at the ethics committee. I mean, it's my job to make sure that the products Lush produces are safe for people and safe from the environment. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to explain the studies I perform to show how it is safe.
And why did you and your team not decide to fight the ban in the EU originally?
Well, at the beginning of the company, we were still somewhat of a small company. We didn't have a lot of money. However, now we do feel we are ready to fight that battle, and we are. We are performing lab tests.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Appears you have 15 seconds, Ms. Yet, if you wish to use them for recross.
That's okay, Your Honor. No recross is necessary.
Thank you. And Dr. Williams, your testimony is complete. You are excused. We'll now move into closing arguments. And for the plaintiff, it appears as though Ms. Yet will be doing that closing argument. And when you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And at this time, I ask to save any remaining time for rebuttal.
Yes, anything that you don't use, unless you can get a time check if you say you want to have 2 minutes of rebuttal. You don't need to do that. Anything that you don't use will be automatically reserved for rebuttal. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Profits over people. Ladies and gentlemen, today you have heard the case of Dakota Weirs versus Lush Fertilizer. Today, you have seen for yourselves that Lush Fertilizer gave Dakota this terminal illness. You've seen that Lush ignored the warnings and the worries presented to them about their revolutionary product, Drufo. They had every opportunity to make Drufo safer, yet didn't. Blake Doncourt, the founder of Lush, this selfish, money-hungry CEO, was focused on the profits of the company rather than the people who trusted Lush. They neglected the allegations of scientists like Carson Durst, who at the time worked for Lush Fertilizer, because they were more focused on making a profit. Blake Doncourt would rather waste your time boasting about environmental labels than addressing the flaws and the faults of their own company. Skylar Weirs, a beat journalist and a self-taught researcher with no college degree or formal training in agritech, they have brought you no noteworthy or accurate information here today. The twin of Dakota Weirs is testifying here against them in court today. They're more focused on making a profit. They're more focused on getting a paycheck out of this case than they are their own sibling. Devin Williams is a paid employee of Lush with an obvious financial bias in this case. Their job here today is to make money for Lush, for Blake Doncourt. Their money-focused mindset drove them to put profits over people. Now, Dakota Weirs, the victim of this horrible disease, with a perfect life as a busy, involved model student, has lost everything because of this company. She planned to put herself through school and got this job to pay for her own education. She never expected her life to be flipped upside down and her dreams torn down by this greedy and thoughtless company who puts profits over people. I would now like to direct your attention to jury instruction number 3. It states that the use of the product may be harmful or injurious to a user, and that risk of injury is not obvious to a reasonable user. The manufacturer of a product must use reasonable care in warning a user if a reasonably careful person would under the same or similar circumstances, and the failure to do so is negligence. Ladies and gentlemen, Lush Fertilizer was simply negligent. They purposefully chose to put profits over people. Blake Doncourt simply ignored scientists and their worries about the product Drufo. Blake was the one who made the catastrophic and destructive decision to not bake Drufo, resulting in detrimental consequences. Blake wanted to make a profit for their company and not protect people. Ladies and gentlemen, blame Blake Doncourt. Today, you have been presented with rock-hard evidence that Drufo is dangerous. So what makes it acceptable to be continued to be sold on the market to at-risk and vulnerable people like Dakota Weirs? I ask that you find in favor of Dakota Weirs, who is asking $15 million in damages against Lush Fertilizer. Members of the jury, it is time that Lush takes responsibility for giving Dakota this illness, and it's time that you, members of the jury, hold them accountable for putting profits over people. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we have closing for the defense, I neglected to ask the scoring panelists to activate their videos. We'll do that now. I had one juror on, but if we could have the other two, there we go. My mistake. And we'll now continue with closing argument for the defendant, Ms. Virick.
Yes, Your Honor. Not all heroes wear capes. When Blake Doncourt was younger, he wanted to be a superhero. Eventually, he accepted that he'd never be as fast as the Flash or as strong as the Hulk. But he did find his own superpower, a fertilizer, created to be safer for the environment and safer for people everywhere. Now that very fertilizer is being labeled a killer. Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. Today, the plaintiff had the burden. So let's talk about what they failed to prove. The first element in contention is that Lush Fertilizer failed to prevent their product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. Let me be clear. The notion that Lush's product is dangerous is absurd. The company didn't need to bake the fertilizer in order to eliminate an unreasonable risk of harm because there was no unreasonable harm to begin with. The real risks, eye irritation, skin rash, typical. And by law, the company wasn't even required to put a recommendation on their label. But they still chose to go above and beyond because that's the type of company that Blake Doncourt created from the start, one that values people over profit. The second element in contention is that Dakota Weirs has damages that were caused by Lush Fertilizer's negligence while the product was being used in a way the company expected. Dakota Weirs admitted he chose not to wear protective gear. He chose to ignore the orders of his boss and to not heed the warnings. He worked with dozens of fertilizers and chemicals, but she chose to put herself in danger. Now, what has happened to Miss Weirs is a tragedy, and no one is asking you to deny that. But when tragedy strikes, we look for a scapegoat, even when that person or company is innocent. They have failed to prove these two elements by a preponderance of the evidence. And because they failed you, we didn't need to prove comparative fault, but we still did. Dakota Weirs didn't wear protective gear. It's that simple. Now, at the beginning of this trial, Ms. Graham asked you to remember 3 questions. The first, would we be here if Dakota Weirs had just worn protective gear like she was told? We don't know. Miss Weirs saw a single news story and suddenly every single carcinogen in her life disappeared. We'll never know if it was caused by the dozens of fertilizers or the very chemicals she used to clean her beloved piano, because she chose her villain from the start. The second question, what do competitors have to gain from this lawsuit? The answer, everything. Lush Fertilizer had cornered the market, and at every step along the way, competitors wanted to take them down. The final question, where is the definitive link between Lush Fertilizer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? There is none. Their attempt to connect Lush to cancer is riddled with flaws. Casey Rogers couldn't even tell you what chemical he isolated. How are we supposed to buy this misguided study? Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear suits and some wear ties. This is the last time that I get to talk to you today. But my opponent is going to come back up here, and she's going to try and wash away everything we just talked about. Don't let her. Instead, ask her this question and make her answer it. What happened to every other carcinogen in Dakota Weir's life? Find Lush Fertilizer not liable, because not all heroes wear capes. Thank you.
Thank you. And could we have a time check on any rebuttal by Ms. Yet, please? It says a minute 35. Ms. Yet, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, we representing Dakota Weirs have proven to you beyond the preponderance of evidence today that Lush Fertilizer is negligent. I now direct your attention to jury instruction number 2. We have proven to you beyond the preponderance of the evidence that elements 1, 3, and 4 are not in question. It is up to you to decide if element number 2 is true or false. Skylar Weirs admitted to you today that nitrogen contributes to carcinogenic qualities, and it has been established that by multiple witnesses, that Drufo contains nitrogen. Blake Doncourt said carcinogens are bad for profits. This is just yet another example of how they choose to put profits over people. Dr. Williams said too much of anything could cause cancer. So my answer to the defense's question is this product contains a massive degree of medical probability that it gave Dakota cancer. As you've heard from the defense, they care more about the competitors and the market than they do this person's life. Today, you have heard the defense try and build up a Blake Doncourt as a superhero. This idolized, money-focused CEO is put on a pedestal as this environmental protector, when in reality, you now know Blake Doncourt as the CEO who gave a young girl cancer. Dakota Weirs is a bright young adult who's had their life ruined by this company. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you know better than to let Lush Fertilizer get away with this. Lush is absolutely and entirely negligent. Hold them accountable for putting profits over people. Thank you.
Thank you. The case now stands submitted. I'll ask the scoring panelists to take themselves off of video. When they have submitted their score sheets, activate your video again. That way we'll know that we're ready for comments. And Ms. Reed, if you'd disable your Ms. Reed's screen, looks like it's been frozen, so we'll assume that she's taken herself off video. Anyway, congratulations to, I'd like all of the participants on, including the timekeepers, if you'd activate your videos. Great, congratulations. This is, we're down to the second to last round, so congratulations. I wanted to say this was an extraordinarily smooth and professional performance on both sides, witnesses, attorneys. This went off so smoothly. If we didn't, have this technical problem that we had, it would have been just seamless end to end. But it was a tremendous job by both of you. I have not seen such a smooth and seamless performance in a long, long time. I neglected to tell you that as to why I, can share that kind of opinion with you. I neglected to tell you about my own background. I'm in my basement here because I just retired last year. But before that, for 14 plus years, I was a district court judge in Arapahoe County in the 18th district. Before that, I was a civil trial lawyer for 26 years doing this. I had lots of product cases. I did other things too, but these issues are really in my wheelhouse as far as being familiar with them and appreciating them. Believe me, I really did appreciate what you've done here. Let's see, I've got two scoring panelists here. I wanted to make one other comment, but I will not make it until there we have our last scoring panelist. So all of our scores are submitted.
We actually have one scoring panelist that I believe is that actually dropped off. So if we just want to give just a second until we see if she's able to reconnect. It was the one that it was Miss Reed. She is the one that I believe froze. And so I just want to give a second.
I was looking, I'm sorry, you're right. I was looking at a timekeeper there. Not
Everybody looks so young.
You're right.
So I just want to give her a second and see if she's able to reconnect. I haven't heard anything from her, so.
Well, she probably won't be able to submit if she's not connected. So we'll wait a moment before we have any comments.
That'd be great. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything.
Great. Let's see. Well, I'm glad you're all, we finished in really good time. My general time on these is 2.5 hours for your cases, meaning your pretrial stuff, your opening, closing, all the witnesses, 2.5 hours. But it takes me half an hour to do the preparation for it. And I think that's important time. And I know that, takes some time away from you to have lunch and get prepared for your next trial. It'll be in an hour, but I think that's important to do, to make sure that we have all the rules clear, that all of the preliminaries are done. And it takes me about half an hour to do all that, to swear everybody in, all those sorts of things. So I hope that's not too boring for you in the beginning. Let's see, we're just not allowed to make comments until we know that all the scorers have submitted their ballots, because in theory, they could change their mind based on something
the two scoring panelists that you have submitted their ballot. It looks like Miss Reed is having internet issues, so she definitely can't be. She can't join back on yet.
So she can't hear anything.
No, so it looks like you're good to proceed.
Good point. Okay. Mr. Eliason and Ms. Schlinsog. Ms. Schlinsog, why don't you start?
Okay, so are we just doing some general comments?
No, because it just didn't occur to me, and Amber pointed out the obvious, that Ms. Reed can't be influenced by anything she can't hear. So she can't hear anything. She's not connected. So go right ahead.
With comments for the students?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. One thing I did notice was when the plaintiffs did their opening, they pronounced it wires and then proceeded to pronounce it weirs throughout the rest of the trial. So maybe just get on the same page about the pronunciation on that one. And on both the opening and the closing for the defense, I could tell what your theme was, no question about that. Maybe a little too much, but I know that you guys are instructed to go hard on the theme. But you guys had a more dramatic presentation for your opening and closing. So it felt like maybe the combination of those two together was like a touch too much. So like maybe a little less dramatic if you're gonna go so hard on the theme, just a thought. And again, these are just, I'm only gonna touch on some negative things just because that gives you some ideas for improvement for the next round. Obviously, everybody did a great job. One other thing I did really notice, and this was true throughout for both teams, and I don't quite know what the reasoning was, but hearsay objections were just like missed completely. Like there were situations happening right and left that I really felt like could have been objected to with hearsay. And that also would have, even if you were skipping them because you knew that the other side could come back and had a response and everything to it, show us, let us see that back and forth with the objection fight, and let us see that you really understand the rules of evidence. But that's all I got.
Mr. Eliason.
Thank you. I know from doing a lot of these competitions that there's really nothing I can tell you at this point that you haven't been told by coaches or judges along the way. I thought you were all very, very well prepared, and that really shone through to me. It's always a joy to watch high school students perform at what I would consider a level significantly beyond your years and experience level. So you all did a great job. I want to commend you all on making it this far. Congratulations. I hope that this is something you continue to do through college, and that we have a lot of bright young minds joining the legal profession. So thank you.
One last comment from me. This applies to both sides. You each have a witness, as you're well aware, who has a professional degree, a doctorate, but not a doctorate in medicine. And that issue was addressed specifically with Dr. Rogers. It was implicitly addressed with Dr. Williams, where they're both talking about this correlation between Drufo causing cancer. And that was fairly well expressed by both experts, that there is that correlation, and whether or not it's just a correlation or a probability or whatever was the opinion of those doctors. However, and especially with Dr. Rogers, there was an objection, and I clarified that Dr. Rogers, in my ruling, that Dr. Rogers could testify to that correlation, but could not give medical opinions. And he gave his opinion of that correlation. But when he said it, and this may be in his affidavit, I don't know, regardless of whether it's in his affidavit, what he said was medical degree of probability. Well, he can testify to a probability in his area, which is his professional area as a toxicologist or whatever he is. A toxicologist, but he cannot testify to a medical probability. He can only testify to in his area of expertise. And I expected an objection there. I would have entertained it if I'd have gotten one. But since both sides are dealing with that same issue, every trial I've had, that issue's been addressed. He can't testify to medical issues, and he didn't until he said to a reasonable degree of medical probability. That was the trigger for me. I expected an objection. So in any event, this was a wonderful presentation. As I said, the first thing I wrote down on my sheet was, this is so smooth and seamless. This was a pleasure to watch. So thank you very much. Good luck in your next round, and we'll drop everybody, and I'll speak briefly with Amber. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.